Welcome, one and all, to Reimagining Tears of the Kingdom. This is actually a follow-up to my two rewrite videos that I made a while back, so I'd advise watching those first for context if you haven't already. Links will be in the description. I've changed a lot of details regarding the Zonai, the nature and origin of the Secret Stones, renamed Sacred Tears in my version, the Sages, the founding of Hyrule, the Imprisoning War, and the First Great Calamity. Those videos cover the basics of the backstory that you'll need to know going into this one. If it wasn't obvious, this reimagining is going to be wildly different from the original game. My main focus with this project is to rectify most, if not all, of my gripes with Tears of the Kingdom's story and the treatment of its main cast. That said, I'll be overhauling not just story beats, but gameplay elements and mechanics as they are needed to complement my vision of the story. We'll dive into those as needed while we go. So, without further ado, let us begin. I ended my first video by saying that the intro to the game would be more or less the same as in the original version. But yeah, we're going to be making some heavy alterations after all. Things start out simple enough, with Link and Zelda descending deep into the earth to explore some Zonai ruins. Zelda uses her Sheikah slate to snap some photos, while Link stands steadfast at her side with his new Purapad. Zelda is deeply fascinated by all of it, but forces herself to remain focused. This is, after all, more than just an archaeological expedition. A strange power similar to malice has been slowly eroding ancient Sheikah technology all over the kingdom these last 5 years. The towers, shrines, and even divine beasts have all fallen into a state of disrepair, and Pura's research team has finally narrowed down that these ruins seem to be the source of the corruption. Zelda and Link are the only two who can safely traverse this far in, due to the former having sacred power in her veins and the latter wielding the Master Sword. The duo delve further and further into the depths, until they enter into a large, opulent chamber with a huge runic circle on the ground. There, they find a withered corpse being held in place by what seems to be a disembodied arm. The malice seems to be leaking from the corpse, and Zelda deduces that this must be the source of the corruption. Zelda and Link make their way to the center of the room to investigate the body, that of Ganondorf, though of course they don't know his name yet. There, Zelda uncovers a peculiar stone on the ground, much like in the original, and picks it up. She notes that a similar pitch-black stone seems to be attached to the corpse's forehead. Suddenly, the Master Sword begins to react, as if the blade itself is frightened. Just then, the corpse's eyes light up, and he turns to gaze at the newcomers. Ganondorf grabs the hand lodged into his chest, pulls it free, and tosses it across the room. A tendril of malice surges forth, and Link leaps in the way to try and parry it with his sword. He manages to cut through the first tendril, then a second and third. The fourth, though, manages to sneak past Link's guard and latch on to his arm. Ultimately, Link's arm is covered in wicked energy, much like in the original, causing him to lose his health and stamina, and the Master Sword falls from his grasp. I'm not having the blade break in this version, though. Zelda intervenes, summoning her light power to try and repel the darkness. To her surprise, the stone in her hand reacts, glowing with a golden color. The malice retreats, and Ganondorf stands up slowly. He inspects the pair before him and snarls. "A princess of light, and a hero wielding a sacred blade. So, you are the ones prophesied to oppose me. You may attempt to finish what Rauru and Sonia began, but I will not be bound by fate." Zelda questions the meaning of his words, kneeling next to Link as he cradles his arm, but Ganondorf only responds by unleashing another tendril of malice. The malice carries Link out of the circle and slams him into the wall near the entrance. Zelda tries to reach out to him, but before she can, Ganondorf slams his hand into the ground. The circle begins to light up, and Ganondorf proclaims that he will regain the power that was taken from him. Link attempts to stumble back into the circle, reaching out towards Zelda in futility. Then, Zelda, Ganondorf, and the Master Sword all vanish from the circle, as a massive wave of energy shoots out from it, leaving Link alone. Link collapses on the spot, the corruption in his arm starting to take its toll. Before he passes out completely, however, Link sees the discarded arm from before begin to light up, and a voice speaks to him. You must not fall here. Here comes the biggest change for my version of the game. At this point, players will be given a choice to follow the story of Zelda or Link. They will be given the chance to switch later, and in fact will be required to do so, but who you want to start the game with is entirely on you. Link's story will take place in Hyrule and focus on re-exploring the land from Breath of the Wild as it has been changed from recent events. As before, his primary objective will be reuniting with Princess Zelda, while aiding the people of the kingdom with whatever troubles they may be facing. We'll go into the nitty-gritty details later, but for now, just know that Link's part of the game will be most similar to what came before. Zelda, on the other hand, will find herself in a completely different realm. See, one of the biggest disappointments to me from Tears of the Kingdom was how lacking the sky felt. Outside of the game's opening area, the floating remnants of Zonai civilization we get to explore are nothing more than a few hovering islets that mainly just serve to house puzzles. Frankly speaking, I think the game's premise of having 3 different layers to the world was perhaps a bit overly ambitious. Between the sky, surface, and depths, none of them feel like they really got fleshed out nearly as much as they could have been. So yes, I'm going to say that Zelda's portion of the game takes place within the realm of the Zonai, where their culture originated. Zelda will explore entire ancient cities, towns, and temples placed on floating islands that are scattered around a great otherworldly expanse. Basically, think of the Twilight Realm from Twilight Princess if you got to explore more than like 3 buildings in that entire world. Furthermore, parts of Hyrule and the Sacred Realm will be bleeding over into each other, but we'll get more into that in a bit. Also, another thing, I'm going to lean way more into the idea of the Zonai being a magically inclined race as opposed to technological. A lot of people expressed their disappointment that the Zonai in the original game effectively wound up being the Sheikah 2.0, and I do have to agree. I want to lean way more into trying to give them a mystical arcane feeling, as opposed to the borderline sci-fi nonsense they've got in the original game. I know that would probably mean sacrificing a lot of the building mechanics, but, well, that version of the game already exists, and it's not like my rewrite will ever be playable in any capacity, so screw it. I'm going all out with this one. With all of that said, let's start with Link's version of the story. Link awakens sometime later to hear a mysterious voice calling out his name. His clothes are tattered and torn, but more importantly, his arm has now been replaced by something inhuman. Or Hylian, I guess? Whatever. The point is that I'm having this game's tutorial be a bit more streamlined by taking place in the underground ruins as Link tries to climb his way back out. I get the importance of onboarding new players who might be jumping into Tears of the Kingdom without having played Breath of the Wild, but I don't think we needed an even longer version of the Great Plateau to accomplish that, especially considering the immediate urgency of the situation this time around. Just have Link acquire and use Zonai magic to escape from the chamber, since the way back seems to have collapsed in all the chaos. Link will be guided by the mysterious voice in the use of Ultra Hand, Ascend, and Fuse to make his way through the ruins, fighting strange golems and monsters all the while. Eventually, he arrives at what appears to be a shrine, like an actual shrine, depicting a woman he's never seen before. At the base of this shrine is a scepter containing another small stone, similar to what Zelda found before. Suddenly, a spirit emerges from Link's right hand. Do not be alarmed. I understand you must have many questions, but time is of the essence, so I shall explain things as succinctly as I can. My name is Rauru of the Zonai, and long ago, I ruled Hyrule as its king. I also served as the Sage of Light. The woman you see before you is Queen Sonia, my queen, and the former Sage of Time. Together we fought to stop the machinations of a wicked man, but we both paid a hefty price for it. All that remains of me now is my spirit, and the arm now attached to yours. Ah, yes. Forgive me for that. I had to act quickly to prevent the malice from eating away at your body further, but there is little I can do in my present state. Luckily, my magics allowed me to meld my remaining flesh with yours, and it seems the process has allowed you to wield some Zonai magics as well. But enough about that. Do you see the staff at the base of my beloved Sonia's statue? More specifically, the small stone embedded within it. That is a sacred tear, an object gifted to the sages long ago by the goddess Hylia. The sacred tears each represent a divine element, and were meant to be passed down through the sages' bloodlines. Alas, Sonia's tear was depleted of nearly all its power long ago. Link approaches the tear and, to his surprise, it seems to glow with a faint white light. Rauru perks up at this. Oh? How curious. Link, I advise you to take the sacred tear. Though I am loath to remove it from its resting place, I know that my queen would understand. Its power may be useful to us. Link nods and does as he is told, removing Sonia's staff from its pedestal. Though its power is far from what it once was, the artifact still holds some small dominion over time's flow. With it, Link can use the rewind ability, sending objects back to their prior positions up to 30 seconds ago. With Rauru's Zonai magic and Sonia's rewind ability, Link emerges into the remnants of Castle Town. To his shock, he finds that several mysterious ruins now appear to be dotted around the landscape. Rauru's spirit emerges again to comment on this. What is this? Those are Zonai structures. But how? Could it be that opening the gate has caused some sort of disruption within the realms? Ah, yes. I suppose I should explain. You see, we Zonai originate from a place your people call the Sacred Realm. It is, how should I put it, a world separate from the one you reside in. It can normally only be accessed through special gateways, called realm gates, like the one you saw down below. Link questions Rauru further. Zelda? Ah, yes, the young woman who was accompanying you. It seems she was taken there when Ganondorf, the figure you encountered, activated the realm gate. Unfortunately, his methods were crude. By forcing the gate open as he did, not only did Ganondorf damage it beyond use, it seems he's managed to create instabilities within the very world itself. Parts of the sacred realm bleeding into Hyrule and vice versa. To think even he could be so reckless. You want to go to the sacred realm? Ah, in pursuit of Zelda, I surmise. Well, it seems our interests are aligned then. I also wish to return there, as that is likely where Ganondorf has gone. He doubtless aims to hide away there while regaining his former power, which means we must find and stop his machinations before he can recover his full strength. If we do not, the fate of both worlds may hang in the balance. Unfortunately, as I said, traveling to and from the sacred realm requires the use of a realm gate, and the one you saw down in the Temple of Light was damaged beyond repair. There were other gateways built into the sages' temples, though thousands of years have passed. I cannot be certain whether they still function. Still, I suppose it is the best lead we have at the moment. Before that, though, Rauru turns his attention to a structure in the distance. The journey ahead of us will be long and arduous. Why don't we pay a visit to that settlement over there? Perhaps they will have equipment and resources you can use. Ganondorf is not a foe you wish to face unprepared. Believe me, I learned that lesson well a long time ago. Okay, so let's just address this now. Yes, I am completely removing the Sky Islands from this version of Hyrule. Instead, we'll say that Zonai structures are appearing all around the kingdom as a result of something called realm bleed. This may or may not be partially inspired by echoes of wisdom. Regardless, just as Rauru said, parts of Hyrule have been transported into the Sacred Realm and vice versa thanks to Ganondorf's meddling. This is also how we're going to justify Zonai shrines this time around. or as I'm calling them, trial sites. Not much needs to be changed here, I think. Link can enter them with Raru's hand to undergo tests of his ability. These reward him with points that he can use to upgrade his heart or stamina. Or, alternatively, players can just be given a choice at the end of each trial, a fourth of a heart or a sliver of stamina. I personally wouldn't mind cutting out the middleman when it comes to upgrades, letting players just make the choice in the shrine rather than having to get 4 spirit orbs and then trek back to a goddess statue. Still, that's a matter of preference, I suppose. Anyways, back to the plot. From here, players are set free to roam and explore the world. Obviously, your main objective is to go to Lookout Landing, but you can theoretically go anywhere at this point. For the sake of this rewrite, though, we're just going to focus on the main progression of the story for now. So, with that said, let's make for Lookout Landing. This place hasn't changed too much from the original. Purah and Robbie are still operating it as a sort of central research site and makeshift fort while investigating the malice. Also, to address this, yes, I'm getting rid of Gloom and just keeping it as Malice. It's functionally the same thing, but with a slightly worse name and a little bit of a different color. Anyways, Link will report to them and tell them the general gist of all that's happened, though he opts to keep quiet about Raru's spirit for the time being. Purah seems especially interested in Link's new arm and wonders if she could run some tests on it, but Robbie reminds her that there's precious little time to think about that right now, especially when Zelda is in danger. He says that all research efforts will be directed toward investigating these realm gates, as well as the mysterious structures cropping up, in the hopes of finding a way to Princess Zelda. Just then, a strange device in the main research building lights up. A transmission comes through from Rito Village, claiming that an intense blizzard has overtaken the area. Another transmission comes through suddenly, this time from Death Mountain, saying that several local Gorons appear to have begun acting strangely. A third transmission from Zora's domain reports that the water has been contaminated by a mysterious sludge. Finally, an SOS comes from the Gerudo, requesting immediate assistance as they are beset by unidentified hostile creatures. All transmissions fall silent, and Link, Robbie, and Purah look around at each other. It's a lot to take in, but the researchers urge Link to go and look into each of these distress calls. After all, searching for these realm gates will be much more difficult with the land in chaos, and Link, eager as he is to find the princess, can't just abandon people in need. And so Link's mission is set. Go out to each of the 4 main regions of Hyrule, resolve their respective calamities, and try to find the realm gates located in each one. Before any of that, though, Link is encouraged to stock up on supplies and have a rest in the base's bunker. Resting is not only a good way to pass the time, but it will also allow players to switch characters. And with that, we now switch over to Zelda's side of the story. Zelda awakens in a strange place. She slowly climbs to her feet and looks around, calling out for Link. He does not reply. Suddenly, Zelda notices the Master Sword nearby and rushes over to grab it. She lifts the blade tenderly, then takes stock of her surroundings. The princess finds herself in a rocky, hilly terrain that seems unlike anything she's familiar with in Hyrule. Zelda wonders aloud where she is, and the Master Sword glows in response. Suddenly, a ghostly figure emerges from the blade. This is my home. Zelda steps back, frightened, and prepares to summon her light magic. The spirit assures Zelda that she means no harm, and apologizes for frightening her. I am the Sage of Spirit. My name is Minoru of the Zonai. I'm glad to finally be able to speak to you like this, Princess, but there sadly isn't much time for pleasantries. Naturally, Zelda is a tad excited to be speaking to a member of the Zonai race, but she quickly collects herself and begins to question Minoru. The spirit responds by guiding Zelda toward the edge of the plateau where they stand, and Zelda is aghast at what she sees. Before her is a vast, seemingly endless sky, filled with floating islands and structures. Some are small, while others are at least large enough to house entire cities. This is the sacred realm, the home of my people, or at least it was long ago. Minoru speaks with a note of sadness in her voice. Zelda questions her meaning. to which Minoru responds, "Most of the Zonai perished in the imprisoning war. I was one of the few survivors." Zelda mentions that the term imprisoning war is vaguely familiar to her. It's a phrase that appears in ancient Zonai texts, but due to the difficulties of translating said texts, not much is known about it. Before Minoru can respond, the air itself seems to tremble. Bits of Hyrulean architecture start to manifest abruptly all around, a result of the realm bleed that we discussed earlier. Zelda is encouraged to make her way toward a settlement in the distance, called Realm's Heart. Gameplay begins, and Minoru's spirit will act as a guide to help Zelda navigate the path. Before we go any further, I suppose now is as good a time as any to address this, the gameplay. Zelda will play quite differently than Link. While not as adept at wielding traditional weapons, she has had 5 years to hone the light magic inside her. Technically 105 if you want to count the centuries she spent acting as a living seal for Calamity Ganon. Zelda fights primarily by unleashing golden radiance upon her enemies. This can be in the form of close-range bursts, small shining discs, or of course, the Bow of Light. Zelda can swap between these spells in her equivalent of the weapons menu. However, all of this will draw from a magic meter under Zelda's health bar. The magic meter will refill slowly over time, but needless to say, it will be a resource players need to keep track of when fighting enemies as Zelda. Basically, it's her equivalent to Link's stamina bar, and can be upgraded over the course of Zelda's campaign. Zelda doesn't just have magic to fall back on, though. She can also make use of items around the world, such as bluster caps, bomb flowers, fire fruits, and a few other consumables, not unlike Link. The Sacred Realm will also give Zelda access to a few unique items and tools she had not found in Hyrule. There is one other major factor to Zelda's gameplay, but we'll get to that soon. That said, having Raru's Sacred Tear will allow Zelda another ability, Levitate. By focusing her power through the tear, she can summon a pair of shimmering wings that let her glide for a short time. This will effectively be her equivalent to the paraglider, and yes, it is tied to the magic meter. Now, about that other aspect to Zelda's gameplay. As established, Minoru's spirit presently resides within the Master Sword. As such, the blade will levitate near Zelda, following the princess wherever she goes. By using the ZL button, which would normally pull out a bow for Link, Zelda can instead grab and aim the Master Sword, then launch Minoru's spirit from the blade in a target direction. This allows Minoru to possess certain other interactable objects in the environment as well, a power unique to her as a sage. Zelda, still holding the Master Sword, can direct Minoru to move objects and rotate them for her. If it wasn't obvious, I'm basically making this as a sort of parallel for the Ultra Hand ability. That way, both Zelda and Link can mess around with the physics in the environment. The only difference is that Minoru can't stick items together. But there's another benefit to Minoru's power that you'll learn about soon enough. As Minoru guides Zelda along, she tells the princess more about the current situation, and Zelda has plenty of questions to ask. Minoru, you claimed you were a sage earlier. What does that mean, exactly? Long ago, I was one of the 8 sages appointed to protect Hyrule by none other than the goddess Hylia, the Sage of Spirit. I was blessed with power over souls, which I could focus with my sacred tear. Sacred tear? You mean that stone around your neck? Come to think of it, I found a similar stone in that chamber. Yes, that sacred tear belonged to my brother, Rauru, the Sage of Light, and the first king of Hyrule as you know it. Long ago, he gave his life to seal the Demon King that threatened to destroy both our worlds. Yet, I see that the stone reacts quite strongly to you, Princess. I suppose that is hardly surprising, since his power flows through you. Through me? You mean King Rauru is my ancestor? I am a Zonai. Partially. My brother wed a Hylian woman by the name of Sonia, but that's not important right now. Listen to me, Zelda. That figure you encountered deep below the castle was the Demon King, Ganondorf. The seal my brother placed on him so long ago has been weakening for ages. And now, Ganondorf! So, then it's true what the stories say. The Great Calamity was once a man. Oh no! If that's true, then that means that the source of all malice and monsters is free. Yes, but don't fret just yet. After being confined for so long, his power will take time to fully awaken. I suspect that's why he retreated here. Ganondorf hopes to hide himself away within the sacred realm to recover his lost strength. Zelda, we must find and stop him before that happens. I concur, but what can we do? How can we... Zelda is interrupted as monsters suddenly appear on the path before her. The princess pauses, but Minoru urges her to keep calm. She assures Zelda that, as the Sage of Spirit, there are things she can do even though her body is long gone. Minoru urges Zelda to point the Master Sword at her enemy, and Minoru will take care of the rest. Players will be instructed to focus the blade at a foe, and press a button to launch Minoru's spirit from the weapon. Minoru can then possess an enemy to fight on Zelda's behalf, though only for a short time. Moreover, stronger enemies will be much harder to possess. That said, when inhabiting the Master Sword itself, Minoru can briefly possess it to fight as a sort of ally for Zelda. Think Ingrid from God of War Ragnarok, but a bit less flashy. That said, Minoru is not the one destined to wield the blade, so she can't draw on any of its sacred power. She can only wield it at all through technicality, and the Master Sword won't do much more damage than an ordinary blade under Minoru's influence. Regardless, Minoru proves to be a useful ally, and a decent support to Zelda while she fends off enemies with her items and magic. With the enemies dealt with, Minoru guides Zelda to a curious stone pedestal. There, they find what seems to be a scroll covered in glowing green text, which Zelda cannot decipher. Minoru informs her that this is a mystic scroll, a relic of the Zonai that details how to use their ancient magic. Luckily, Minoru can decipher such scrolls for Zelda, allowing the princess to perform these spells herself, something made possible by Zelda's distant Zonai ancestry. This scroll contains the spell for Bridge, which allows the user to conjure a temporary bridge of energy across gaps. There is a limit to how far such a bridge can extend, but it still proves useful for helping Zelda navigate the area. Zelda continues onward, and surprisingly encounters a familiar face, Impa. The Kakariko Elder is surprised to see Zelda and vice versa. The two briefly catch up, with Zelda explaining how she arrived here, and Impa sharing her own story. The Elder had been traveling after retiring as the head of the Sheikah, when an ominous presence suddenly washed over her. Impa has been pulled into the sacred realm as a result of the realm bleed phenomenon, and Zelda will find several of Hyrule's other inhabitants displaced in a similar manner. Basically, the sacred realm will be filled not just with Hyrulean architecture, but also people doing their best to get by in this strange and unfamiliar environment. In other words, an excuse to have side quests and NPCs in the sacred realm. People that Zelda can roam around to help get accustomed, or to find shelter, or what have you. Zelda promises to do what she can for the people she comes across, before making her way to an ancient-looking settlement. From here, Zelda and Minoru can see trails of darkness rising up to the north, southeast, and southwest. Minoru states that the darkness appears to be coming from each of the Sacred Realm's three holy sites: the Temple of the Owl, the Temple of the Dragon, and the Temple of the Boar. Ganondorf must be doing something at each of these three sites. She also notes that the temples are where realm gates are usually placed, so if Zelda wishes to return to Hyrule, those sites will be her best bet. And so it is that Zelda has her three destinations. Before she progresses, though, Minoru urges Zelda to proceed just a little further northward, to an islet just up ahead. There, she will find Zonai golems that offer a variety of services, selling food and items in exchange for rupees. a function they continue to fill long after their masters are gone. There is also a small room where Zelda can rest up for the journey ahead, which also serves as a way for players to switch back to Link. Minoru urges Zelda to come talk to her when she's ready to depart, and drifts over to the edge of a nearby platform to wait. So we now have both characters established. Link will search for the Sage's temples while facing new calamities in each region, and Zelda will make her way through the Sacred Realm in search of Ganondorf and the Realm Gates that will take her home. There would be lots for players to do in both worlds, from side quests to collectible hunts. But for the purposes of this rewrite, we're going to focus almost exclusively on the main stories. We return now to Link's journey, and we're going to have him start by paying a visit to the Rito. Before he sets off, though, Purah informs him that since Malice corrupted a lot of the old Sheikah towers, much of their original map data has been lost. Even if it wasn't, it may not be wholly accurate right now given the state that Hyrule is in. Luckily, repair crews have ventured all across the kingdom and have been working hard these last few years to try and repair the towers, or otherwise build new ones. All Link needs to do is get them back online, and he should be able to establish new, accurate map data based on the current state of things. It will be a handy little side objective to work towards, especially since all Sheikah towers now come equipped with paraglider launch pads. While we're on the matter of side objectives, I'm also going to be reworking the Backstory Collection quest this time around. So, the actual Tears of the Kingdom in Tears of the Kingdom were Zelda's dragon tears that contain very specific memories of her time in the past. These were an attempt to redo the memory collection quest of Breath of the Wild, but it just does not work here. Breath of the Wild's flashbacks worked because they were Link regaining his own fragmented memories by visiting places related to them, and telling them out of order didn't hinder the story as much because we, the players, already knew the story of how the calamity ended. It was just a matter of getting the context. In Tears of the Kingdom, the story of Zelda in the past just fundamentally does not function the same way. It's trying to tell an explicitly linear tale that can be viewed out of order, and only in small disconnected chunks that leave us with more questions than answers. It also just kind of completely ruins the entire mystery of what happened to Zelda that the rest of the game is trying so hard to pretend hasn't already been solved. So here's what we're going to do instead. Link can visit locations that are important to Rauru, and he'll tell Link the story of how he founded the Kingdom of Hyrule as they know it. This will be the same backstory that I went over in my first video. However, this story will be told linearly. No matter which memory locations you visit first, players will get the same cutscenes in the same order for the sake of consistency. But yes, all the backstory about the era of strife, the Triforce, the founding of Hyrule, and so forth will be told as Rauru memories this time around. So, with that established, let us continue to the first location of importance, Rito Village. So I'm actually going to say that the intro to this area can be more or less the same as it was in the original. Link goes to visit Teba, who has taken over as chief of the village, and finds him arguing with his son Tulin. The blizzard is, of course, raging quite fiercely and making it extremely difficult for the Rito to fly and hunt. Everyone has more or less deduced that the source of the problem lies in the mysterious giant cloud that appeared over the skies of Hebra Peak. Yet the frigid winds are so intense that it's nearly impossible to get close to it. Teba himself suffered an injury not long ago attempting to do just that. Despite that, Tulin is eager to try, frustrated that the grown-ups are just waiting around for help to come. Tulin is dismissed, however, and Link is asked to go speak with Saki, who is working with some of the other Rito to try and devise a plan. Once they have a moment alone, Rauru appears, stating that the source of the problem most likely lies within the Wind Temple. Long ago, the temple was created in honor of a Rito warrior who served as the Sage of Wind, but it was hidden high in the heavens, beyond even the clouds themselves. Now, however, the temple has descended. If they can resolve whatever wicked force is now residing within it, it may be possible to use the Realm Gate. Link tracks down Saki, who informs him that she and other Rito are working to develop a new set of gear that will, ideally, prove extremely resistant to the freezing winds that surround Hebra Mountain. However, they lack the materials necessary to complete the uniform. Should Link agree to help gather said materials, Saki and the other Rito will gladly let Link have the first prototype of the suit, and even custom tailor it for Hylian fit. Link sets off to gather the materials, and returns sometime later to deliver them. Just as the outfit is made, however, Teva storms onto the scene, demanding to know if anyone has seen Tulin. When it becomes apparent that the young Rito is nowhere to be found, Teba realizes that the boy must have set off for Hebra alone. Teba is about to set off after him, but Saki intervenes, informing him that he's still in no condition to fly. Reluctantly, Teba begs Link's aid, asking him to find Tulin and bring him back. Link agrees, and with his new Stormbird armor, sets out for Hebra Mountain. Just as Saki promised, the armor offers max cold resistance when the full set is worn, and even reduces blowback from the strong winds while Link is on the ground. Link steadily makes his way up the mountain, where he finds Tulin struggling against the cold. Tulin flaps his wings furiously, trying with all his might to push past the frigid winds, but to no avail. He bounces pitifully along the ground, landing at Link's feet. Link leans down to help him, and Tulin laments that he just isn't strong enough. Suddenly, several monsters come out of the blizzard. Tulin reluctantly climbs to his feet and draws his bow, ready to fight. Link and Tulin fend off the beasts together, the latter occasionally letting loose mighty gales from his wings. When the battle is over, Tulin reluctantly admits that he would have been in a serious trouble if Link hadn't come along. Still, he remains adamant about journeying with Link to the peak. Tulin insists that he can be of help, and so Link agrees, ascending up a series of strange floating platforms. By pressing up on the D-pad, Link can call for Tulin to unleash his wind, which allows Link to cross gaps that he would be otherwise unable to do. Eventually, the duo manage to make their way to a platform located above the Eye of the Storm, where a peculiar floating tower seems to be located. They make their descent to land in front of its door, which mysteriously opens up as they draw near. Tulin comments that whatever is causing the blizzard must be inside, so together, he and Link enter the door. Okay, so being completely transparent here, I'm not going to go into the specific details about the temples in my version. Dungeon design is really not my area of expertise, so I can't say whether what I come up with will be any better or worse than what we got in the original game. All I can say is that I'm 100% keeping the Colgera fight as it is, because that battle was genuinely kinda hype. The only other thing I can really say that I'm changing is that I'd prefer a straight ascent to the top where Colgera is flying around, hence why I decided to make the temple a floating tower this time around. And yeah, the whole unlocking the gate gimmick of the original temples was kind of anticlimactic. The top of the tower is where the realm gate is located. Once the beast is felled, the blizzard stops, and a green sacred tear appears before Tulin. It latches onto his ankle, and Tulin's swallow bow transforms into the Gale Force bow, a weapon that can only be conjured by a sage and infuses every arrow with the power of a cyclone. Suddenly, Rauru emerges. Incredible! So the Sage of Wind has awakened once more. Whoa, who are you? Don't fret. My name is Rauru. I am, well, let's just say I'm a friend. And you, young Tulin, are the Sage of Wind. Huh? What's a sage? We perform a small time cut here as Link and Rauru attempt to explain everything. So, basically, this Ganondorf guy is the one who caused the blizzard, right? And you need my help to fight him? Your power would certainly be a boon, yes. Then you can count me in. I know I'm still not strong enough to do much on my own, but I'll still do whatever I can to help. That is heartening to hear. In that case, Link, Tulin, hold out your hands. The two do as instructed, and a strange energy courses between them. The soul bond is complete. I may not be as adept at this sort of thing as my sister, but your spirits are now connected. Now, we can call upon the power of the Wind Sage at any time, no matter how far apart we may be. Heh, I'll do my best. Thanks to Raru, Link can now call upon Tulin to conjure gusts of wind by pressing up on the D-pad. This will function more or less like it does in the original game, letting him traverse longer distances while paragliding. But since I'm now mapping Sage abilities to a button, like they frankly always should have been, Tulin's Wind can now be more reliably used in combat to repel enemies and incoming projectiles. Moreover, when Link enters combat, Tulin will automatically manifest to fight alongside him. When Tulin is summoned during battle, he'll fly around Link for a brief time, attacking nearby enemies with his bow. Also, yes, I'm letting Link call on the actual sages this time around rather than the ghostly apparitions in the original game. Players can opt to turn the spirits off in the menu like before, but the key difference here is that I'm letting the real characters appear and fight alongside Link rather than these mute ghosts. Maybe even give them some combat dialogue to make them feel more alive. That way, the sages themselves can actually directly contribute to the hero's adventure, rather than standing around and effectively doing nothing until the finale. Unfortunately, while Link has acquired a new ally and a new power, the temple's realm gate appears to have been severely damaged by the blizzard. It proves to be unusable, just like the one in the Temple of Light. Raru tries to reassure Link. It is possible, after all, that one of the other temples still has a functioning gate. Tulin accompanies Link back to Rito Village, where Teba waits to greet them with pride. Upon learning that his son is not only safe, but a sage as well, who helped to bring an end to the blizzard, Teba starts to apologize for doubting Tulin's abilities. Tulin, however, insists that he should be the one apologizing. He acknowledges his own recklessness and swears not to charge in alone again. Tulin promises that he'll do his part in helping to look after the village, but reminds Link that if he ever requires the help of the Wind Sage, he has the power to call on Tulin at any time. Link nods, and with that, his journey to Rito Village is now concluded. All that remains now is to return to Lookout Landing for a rest. Switching back over to Zelda, she wakes from her slumber and goes to talk to Minoru. Zelda tries to ask Minoru more about herself, the Zonai, and all this business with Ganondorf. Minoru tells her that records of such things exist throughout the Sacred Realm, if Zelda is willing to search for them. For now, though, they must choose a destination and depart. By making use of Bridge, along with the remains of the Zonai architecture, Zelda crosses over to the first of the major islands in the Sacred Realm, Yuran Island to the southeast. I envision the major theme of this place to be crystals, making it a good location to farm for gems and the like. Not far in, Zelda will encounter her own trial site, which Minoru informs her can be used to strengthen the mind, body, and soul if Zelda can overcome its test. Just like with Link, this will be Zelda's way of enhancing her heart and magic meter. And yes, there will be trial sites at the start of the other two islands as well, so players will encounter this introductory cutscene regardless of where they start. Also, quick aside, since I'm not sure where else to mention this, I like the idea of the Minish being brought back as Zelda's equivalent to Koroks. She can find these little creatures all throughout the Sacred Realm, and by performing simple tasks for them, like helping them gather food or crossing dangerous terrain, she'll be rewarded with Minish coins. These can be exchanged at tiny shops throughout the realm to increase the size of Zelda's inventory, allowing her to carry more food, clothing, items, etc. Anyways, Zelda makes her way across Yuran Island, eventually arriving before the Temple of the Owl. There, Minoru informs her that a powerful presence lurks inside this place, which was once a repository for knowledge before it fell into disarray. Zelda reassures Minoru that she has no intention of faltering here, and so Minoru can only open the door with a reluctant nod. So, once again, I must sadly refrain from going into too much detail about the particulars of the temple. Again, I'm just not really confident in my ability to try and describe an entire dungeon and all its puzzles purely through words. What I will say, however, is that Zelda will acquire a new Mystic Scroll inside. This one contains instructions for bounce, which allows Zelda to place a magic circle on the ground. Anything that steps inside the circle will be propelled upwards, making it useful for traversal as well as setting traps for enemies. Throughout the temple, Zelda will occasionally catch glimpses of a stranger who looks eerily similar to her. The mysterious figure will seemingly try to bar Zelda's path at times, before vanishing deeper inside. Even so, Zelda pushes onwards, determined to uncover the imposter's identity and find the realm gate within. Zelda eventually arrives in the realm gate's chamber, only to find the doppelganger waiting for her. Who are you? Me? I'm you, of course. Enough of this. Are you Ganondorf? No, I am but Lord Ganon's humble puppet, as you are Fate's. What do you mean? Poor princess, born to be but a pawn of destiny. You suffer and struggle for a kingdom that has done nothing to deserve your kindness. And now here you are, all alone in a strange place. But even that is part of your destiny. You dance on invisible strings, guided by the whims of those who set you on this path. And in the end, it will be for naught. Don't listen to her, Zelda. She only means to distract you. Oh yes, why listen to me when you can trust the sage to be your guide? Pathetic little pawn. How sad that your strings must now be cut. Enough! I am no pawn. I am the Princess of Hyrule. Now be gone from my sight. The impostor cackles as her body begins to twist and distort, making ominous creaking sounds in the process. She rises up on threads made of dark energy, and the battle begins. The first phase of the fight will focus on cutting Puppet Zelda's strings. The puppet will linger in the air, launching dark projectiles down at the real princess while moving around to avoid most attempts of attacking it. The trick will be using Menaru to try and possess the boss. Though she can't maintain control for very long, the Sage's spirit can at least force Puppet Zelda to the ground and give the real Zelda an opportunity to attack. Alternatively, players can try to use Bounce to reach the boss, providing you can get the timing and placement of the rune just right. As the boss's health depletes, so too do the number of strings. Once all strings are severed, the fight progresses to Phase 2. Now grounded, Puppet Zelda's movements become far more erratic. She scrambles madly about on all fours, dashing towards Zelda in an attempt to ram into her. Luckily, Zelda's new ability can counter this. Using Bounce will allow Zelda to launch herself into the air to avoid the charge, or even set a trap that launches and disorients the puppet. Once the battle concludes, Puppet Zelda falls apart, her pieces dissolving into clouds of darkness. Suddenly, that darkness coalesces and rushes towards Zelda. It's here where we get our first Ganondorf memory. A single male is born to the Gerudo every 100 years, and that child is destined to be king. That is the story passed down in the desert. But I was never destined for kingship. My mother was Gerudo, yes, but she was an outcast, part of a roving band of thieves that wandered the sands. I was not born into a life of luxury, but rather into a world of conflict. To survive, one must fight and steal. That is how I spent my childhood. All across the land, people from all walks of life warred around us. They coveted a sacred power passed down by a so-called goddess, leaving naught but ruin in their wake. My people were called thieves, yet just as often we would have to fight to defend what was ours from being taken. That was simply the nature of the world I was raised in, a world where the mighty took what they desired, and the weak were crushed underfoot. Knowing this, I strove to become the mightiest of all. I became a king, not by birthright, but by carving out a place for myself and the rest of my kind. I was known and feared by many as the King of Thieves, but that would all change the day I met another king, who sought to remake the world I knew. His name was Rauru. Zelda takes a moment to catch her breath. Minoru questions if the princess is all right, to which Zelda responds by saying she saw a peculiar vision. Minoru begins to ask for elaboration, but before Zelda can say anything, the owl statue in the room lights up. Minoru encourages Zelda to inspect it, and so she does. Zelda places her hand upon the owl and is filled with sacred energy. Suddenly, Zelda finds herself able to use a new light power, encasing love. This allows Zelda to briefly summon a barrier around herself that reflects incoming projectiles and repels enemies. Zelda says that she feels strange, stronger than before, even. Minoru claims that that's a good thing, as she's earned the favor of this temple's guardian deity. Alas, it would seem that Ganondorf is not here. What's more, the realm gate in this temple is no longer active. It appears they'll have to set out for one of the other two temples in the sacred realm. Thankfully, Zelda can warp back to previous trial sites, or even back to the realm center and search for a place to rest and recover. Zelda will do just that in preparation for the journey ahead. Switching back over to Link, his next destination will be Zora's domain. As he nears Lanayru, though, Link will find that much of the water in the region appears to have been transformed into an ominous brown sludge. Rauru appears to comment on this, stating that it would be inadvisable to swim in or drink from the rivers and lakes around here, just in case you actually needed a hint that this stuff was toxic. This muck has the nasty effect of rapidly draining Link's stamina, causing him to drown almost instantly. Rauru goes on to say that if Link hopes to reach the Water Temple, he'll likely need the aid of the Zora, and suggests going to speak with their current monarch. When Link arrives at Zora's domain, however, he finds that the entire place is in some kind of an uproar. The Zora are doing what they can to try to cleanse the water, which has left many of them sick by clogging up their gills. On top of that, there are notably a lot of flat-headed Zora around here now, who seem to be getting into rather heated arguments with the usual denizens of the domain. Okay, so full disclosure here. I'm taking another idea from the Echoes of Wisdom trailer for this plot point. It always rather annoyed me that Tears of the Kingdom introduced the idea of another domain for Zoras, and we never get to see or learn anything about it. So here's what we're gonna do. This other domain is actually the home of the Deep Sea Zora, and remains secluded far below the waves of the Eastern Sea. They distinguish themselves from the Zora of the domain that dwell in Hyrule's rivers and lakes, with their almost manta ray-like flat heads. And yes, we are going to say that Muzu is one. I was originally going to just have them be River Zora, but I decided against that since trying to justify them secretly living in Hyrule's rivers all along would have been a bit too much of a stretch. Plus, the designs would probably be a little too different from the River Zora of the past. So yes, instead we're saying that the Flathead Zora live at the bottom of the ocean. Anyways, as Link roams around the area, he comes to learn that the Domain Zora appear to be accusing the Deep Sea Zora for the sludge polluting their water. Link arrives in the throne room to find King Dorephan absent. In his place, Sidon is speaking with a Deep Sea Zora, though the two seem to be on far better terms than what the scene outside would suggest. Sidon is lamenting the current state of affairs, and the stranger is trying to reassure him. She then notices Link enter the throne room and looks over to him. Oh, who is this? Ah, it is you. It's good to see you, old friend. Sidon's demeanor appears to brighten at Link's presence, though it seems clear that his smile is more forced than usual. Sidon introduces Link to Yona and vice versa, explaining that she is to be his bride. Their union was meant to help bridge the gap between the Domain and Deep Sea Zora, but now the waters are polluted, and the former believe that the latter are to blame. The fact that the deep sea Zora appear more resilient to the muck only adds fuel to the fire. Rumors that this is some kind of secret invasion plot abound. Yona claims that she'll do anything she can to help cleanse the waters, but Sidon denies her, insisting that she should remain where it's safe. His father has already fallen ill, and Muzu is doing what he can to look after the king. Link states that he wishes to speak with King Dorephan, but Sidon rejects him as well, claiming that his father mustn't be disturbed while resting. Sidon then marches off to check on the situation in Zora's domain, leaving Link and Yona behind in the throne room. If players try to talk to him outside, Sidon simply brushes them off. Yona apologizes for Sidon's behavior. The burden of trying to maintain order during such a tumultuous time is clearly taking a heavy toll on him, but trying to shoulder the burden alone won't do anyone any good. Yona informs Link that King Dorephan has gone somewhere on Ploymus Mountain, though she can't say exactly where, and the waters there are already infected by the muck. If Link wishes to seek out the king, then he might benefit from something that can let him resist the effects of swimming through the muck, at least to some extent. Yona suggests that Link climb to the top of Ploymus Mountain. There, at its peak, he'll find Mipha's court and a certain souvenir at the base of her statue. Link sets out to do just that, and upon arriving at Mipha's statue, finds a chest containing the Zora armor she made for him so long ago. Rauru expresses his surprise that there is a set of Zora armor made to fit a Hylian, considering that Zora women usually craft it only for their beloved. Then again, he understands well that love can easily transcend race. Unfortunately, the Zora armor alone won't be enough. Link returns to Yona, who offers to fashion some deep-sea Zora scales to it. This results in the creation of the real Zora armor, which not only allows Link to swim up waterfalls, but also drastically reduces stamina costs while swimming, even in mucky water. With this, Link can now swim to the pristine sanctum. There, he finds the sickly Dorephan being looked after by Muzu. The two are surprised to see Link, but nonetheless welcome him. Link quickly explains that he's searching for something called the Water Temple, which surprises the king. He does know of such a place, but questions how Link came to know of it. Regardless, King Dorephan says that the temple can only be accessed through the ancient waterworks, which will only open for one bearing a royal Zora scale. King Dorephan chooses to bestow Link with one of his scales, and tells Link to make for the East Reservoir Lake. Before Link departs, though, Dorephan inquires how Sidon is doing. Link briefly explains the situation in Zora's domain, which earns a hefty sigh from King Dorephan. He asks Link to pass along a message, that Sidon mustn't let his fears of the past overcome him. With that, he dismisses Link, putting his trust in the hero. Link arrives at the lake, which appears to be completely contaminated by the muck. Sidon is kneeling on one of the islets, struggling to stand. By his side is Princess Yona, who insists that Sidon mustn't overburden himself. Sidon, please, return to the domain. You need a healer. I cannot. The source of the pollution is here, I know it. Then let us go. My people are more resilient to the muck. We can— No! I could not ask that of you or anyone else. Link arrives before the pair, and Yona pleads for Link to talk some sense into Sidon. Link relays King Dorephan's words. My fears of the past? I see. So that is what this is about. Hear me well, Prince Sidon. I understand your worries, but I am not your sister. I am Princess Yona of the Deep Sea Zora, and this crisis affects my people as well. We swore to build our future together, did we not? To mend the divide between our people? We both have a part to play, sweet Sidon. Yours is in the domain, keeping order among our subjects. Mine is here, working alongside this hero to quell the threat at its source. Princess Yona, Link, I understand. Though I still fear for your safety, you are right. I have a duty to fulfill, and so I must fulfill it. Link, Yona, I beg you, keep each other safe. Fret not, Sidon. The past shan't repeat itself. We will both return to you, I swear it. Yona and Link both nod in response. With that, Link steps past Sidon and holds aloft the Royal Zora scale. Suddenly, a whirlpool appears in the lake, granting access to the ancient waterway. Link plunges into the water, with Yona following close behind. I actually don't envision the ancient waterway changing too much from the original, with the main caveat being that the water is now, of course, filled with muck. There are also plenty of enemies in the area to contend with, including ravenous skullfish that can swarm players even in the murky water. However, by pressing right on the D-pad, players can have Yona shroud Link in a protective barrier of pure water that nullifies damage for a brief time, letting him move from one dry spot to another without much fear. Furthermore, Yona is actually rather proficient with silver scale spears, allowing her to fight alongside Link. With Yona's assistance, Link steadily delves deeper into the waterworks, using switches around the area to lower the water level further and further. Eventually, the mucky water is cleared away enough to expose a large cavern at the bottom of the waterworks. Following the tunnel will lead to a large door, which turns out to be the entrance to the water temple. As Yona approaches the door, the temple seems to react to her presence. The door opens, and Link and Yona venture inside. Once again, I leave the finer details of the temple, as in its structure and puzzles, to your imagination. The boss is once again Muktarok, though I am changing the way you fight it slightly. This time around, Muktarok has to be lured into charging Link in its shark form. If he has Yona's water barrier activated at just the right time, then the shark is dispersed on collision and the monster within exposed. Once the boss is defeated, the muck all dissipates, and a sacred tear will emerge. The tear resonates with Yona and latches onto her wrist. Yona's spears transform into abyssal harpoons, weapons that can only be summoned with the power of a sage, and strike with the ferocity of a deep-sea current. And so, the Sage of Water has awakened. The Sage of Water? Pardon me, but who are you? Ah, yes. Allow me to explain. As before, we skip forward to after the explanation. I see. So my duties now extend not only to my people, but to all of Hyrule. That is what it means to be a sage, yes? It is a daunting task, I know, but not one you need face alone. In truth, I fear the trials ahead may be far too much for any one person to overcome. Then let me lend you my aid, as both a sage and the soon-to-be queen of all Zora kind. Let us unite as one people against a common foe. Well spoken, Princess Yona. Now then, would the two of you kindly hold out your hands? Rauru once again performs a soul bond, this time between Link and Yona. Your spirits are now bound. We may call upon the Water Sage's power at any time. Goodness. Let's not tell Sidon about this, or I fear he shall grow jealous. Unfortunately, the realm gate here is also broken, meaning that there's nothing more to be done. Link and Yona return to Zora's domain, where the poisonous muck has finally dissipated. What's more, all those afflicted have made a full recovery, including Prince Sidon. Speaking of whom, Sidon is overjoyed to see Yona and Link return. He rushes to greet them both, much to Yona's amusement. King Dorephan soon arrives to join in on the merrymaking, inviting everyone to the throne room. There, he announces to Link, Yona, Sidon, and Muzu that he intends to relinquish the throne to his son. Sidon is aghast, but Dorephan insists that the time has come for him to step down. Though Sidon still has much to learn, his devotion to the well-being of the Zora is unmistakable. Dorephan seems certain that with such steadfast allies as Link, and a queen like Yona at his side, Sidon's reign is bound to be a prosperous one. Sidon, humbled, accepts his duty as the new king of the Zora. However, before they can even think about the coronation, there is a greater threat looming on the horizon: Ganondorf, the one responsible for sending that beast into the water temple to begin with. Sidon swears that the Zora, now united, will devote themselves to aiding Link in whatever ways they are able, in preparation for the villain's return. Link has awakened 2 sages now, but he's still no closer to finding Princess Zelda. For now, all he can do is rest and prepare for the long journey ahead. Now we switch back over to Zelda's story. With one temple behind her, Zelda sets out for her next destination, Orifera Island. Located to the southwest of the realm's center, this island boasts lush greenery and dense foliage. Zelda notes that it reminds her a bit of the Faron region back home. This island is also the home of the Minish, but we'll get back to that much later. Minoru informs Zelda that the Temple of the Dragon can be found here, far on the northwestern end of the island. Zelda makes her way across Orifera, completing trials and occasionally performing tasks for those misplaced by the Realm Bleed as she goes. Finally, she stands before the Temple of the Dragon, which Minoru opens with some reluctance. The sage warns Zelda that this temple was once used for a sacred rite, where aspiring Zonai warriors were tested to see if they had the resolve to take up arms in the name of the greater good. Zelda asks for further details, but an ominous presence emanates from the entrance. Minoru warns that the darkness has taken a firm hold here. No doubt Ganondorf's magic has perverted these sacred grounds. Zelda, however, knows that she cannot afford to falter, and sets forward into the temple. After making her way through the first few obstacles set before her, Zelda will encounter another mystic scroll. With Minoru's help in translating it, she acquires a new Zonai spell, Sync. This spell will allow Zelda to temporarily conceal herself in the ground, almost like an Octorok. Basically, it's a sort of counterpart to Link's Ascend. While it doesn't exactly let Zelda pass all the way through the ground, she does become hidden and nigh impervious to damage for a short time. The only real downside is that she can't actively move while burrowed. Regardless, it's a handy ability for evading traps and the like. When Zelda finally reaches the end of the temple, she's shocked to see Link standing there atop the Realm Gate, before a large draconic statue. Link turns to look at her, then smiles. Zelda, likewise, is overjoyed to see him. The two rush toward each other, but Minoru calls out for Zelda to wait. Unfortunately, she's not fast enough. Link's expression of relief turns into a wicked grin, and he draws an ominous-looking perversion of the Master Sword from his scabbard. Link swings the blade at Zelda, who is too shocked to react in time. Minoru, who currently inhabits the real Master Sword, wills the blade to move just in time to deflect the copy's knockoff. Link staggers back, looking rather annoyed to have been denied his opportunity. Link, what? No, you are not Link, are you? The fake Link grunts and stands upright. Malice engulfs him, until he becomes nothing more than a shadowy silhouette. Zelda hastily asks if Minoru is alright, to which the sage responds that she's fine. Zelda should be concerned with the foe right in front of them. Dark Link will fight rather like the original, wielding his fake Master Sword in one hand. He is similarly skilled in battle, quickly closing the distance on Zelda and hacking away with lethal intent. Players will need to fight carefully, keeping Dark Link at bay with possession or otherwise making strategic use of spells and items. All in all, the first phase is pretty straightforward. The second phase of the battle sees Dark Link oozing with malice and summoning a warped Hylian shield. Now his attacks become even more powerful, and each slash of his sword unleashes a small wave of dark energy that extends his reach. Most deadly of all, though, is a new Shadow Spin attack that releases waves of dark energy throughout the entire room. The most efficient way to avoid this attack will be using Sync to hide in the floor and briefly become impervious to damage. Dark Link will be left briefly vulnerable after using the Shadow Spin, so this is a primary opportunity to attack. When Dark Link is finally beaten, he staggers back, attempting to raise his sword for one final blow. Ultimately, though, the fake Master Sword falls to the ground and shatters. Dark Link collapses shortly afterward, and transforms into a cloud of black mist that envelops Zelda once again. Thus, she is shown another of Ganondorf's memories. Rauru, King of the Zonai. He was the one chosen to restore order to this fractured world. He truly believed that he could bring an end to all conflict. I thought him a fool, but when we met on the battlefield, I knew he was no weakling. As monsters beset my fortress, it was Rauru and his allies who came to our aid, wielding magics unlike anything I had ever seen. I thought his ideals were naive, but I respected his martial prowess, if nothing else. It is for that reason alone that I agreed to join his cause. Together, we fought to claim the sacred power so many others coveted, the Triforce, a relic said to be capable of granting any wish. When we at last succeeded, Rauru wielded its might to restore this war-torn land and establish a new kingdom. He and I were appointed as sages to guard over the ancient relic, along with 6 others. At first, I was content with the power and authority granted to me by the sacred tier. However, it was not enough. What use does such power have in an era of peace? What good is a throne in a kingdom of weak, complacent fools? I desired more, so as ever, I decided to take it by any means necessary. When the vision ends, Minoru hurries to Zelda's side. Zelda, are you alright? Yes, I just need a moment. I imagine that can't have been easy for you. What do you mean? For many long years my spirit has resided within the Master Sword. I've slumbered in this blade for what feels like an eternity. In doing so, my spirit had become weak, dulled by the passing of ages. I could scarcely recall my own name at times, and I found I could no longer properly manifest outside of the blade. But even so, I bore witness to all that transpired whenever the blade was taken from its sacred resting place. I witnessed the calamity that ravaged Hyrule, and the heroes who fought to defend against it. I I also bore witness to the day when the kingdom was nearly overrun, and your chosen champion nearly lost his life to defend you. You mean the voice I heard that day? I know how much that swordsman means to you, Zelda. I know you worry for his safety, that you wish to protect him as he fights to protect you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to overstep. I just mean to say that I know you both wield incredible resolve. I've seen you triumph against impossible odds once already. I am certain that even as we speak, Link is doing all within his power to find you. He is alive, Zelda, and you will see him again. Minoru, thank you. Once their discussion ends, Zelda turns her attention back to the matter at hand. The realm gate here is, unfortunately, also broken. However, the dragon statue at the far side of the temple lights up in response to Zelda's presence, as if urging her to come closer. Zelda obliges and feels her inner power growing further. With this, she unlocks a new ability, Shimmering Wind. This attack allows Zelda to dash forward a short distance, damaging enemies in her path. By tilting the control stick, players can alter the direction of her movements. With another temple down, the time has come to once again give Zelda a rest, and the story switches back over to Link. Link's next stop will be Goron City, where the local Gorons appear to have suddenly turned hostile to all outsiders. This is going to be just a slightly more intense version of what we got in the original game. Rather than just lazing around and munching on marbled rock roast, the mind-controlled Gorons now basically become enemies that Link has to incapacitate when fighting. They'll pass out once defeated, but until something is done about the source of the problem, Gorons with red eyes will be an entire enemy type going forward. Luckily, not all of the Gorons seem to be affected. Those with their wits still about them encourage Link to go search for President Unobo, who ventured up toward Death Mountain to look into the origins of these strange rocks. Nobody has seen him since, and nobody with their wits about them can get close to the crater. The Gorons aren't bothered by the heat, but the strange mist flowing from the peak seems to be what causes the others to go crazy and start craving marbled rock roast. That bright pink stone exudes a mist that messes with the mind, and it tastes particularly addictive to Goron. If Link wants to follow after Yunobo, he'll need some special armor that lets him contend with both. The Gorons agree to help Link craft such an armor, provided that he can gather the necessary materials. As it happens, certain types of volcanic stones, when combined together, seem to offer a kind of protection against the influence of marbled rock. Sadly, those Gorons who've already succumbed show no interest in making use of that fact. Link will have to venture around the mountain, fighting possessed Gorons and monsters alike to obtain the necessary materials. Once successful, Link acquires the Igneous Armor, which provides not just heat resistance but also immunity to confusion when the full set is worn. Now properly equipped for the climb, Link ascends to the top of Death Mountain. There, Rauru informs him that the Fire Temple was actually built deep within the volcano itself. Normally, it would be impossible for anyone but a Goron to access, even with special armor, but the magma appears to have vanished from the caldera. Now there is only this ominous haze emitted by marbled rock, which Link must brave to reach the temple. Link descends into the depths of the volcano, emerging into a vast underground space. There he finds Yunobo furiously hacking away at large deposits of marbled rock. The Goron appears to be protected from the mist by his fiery shield, but his efforts to destroy its source appear to have barely made a dent. Still no good, but I can't give up. If I don't clear all this stuff out, then everyone will... Huh? Who's there? Wait, Link? What are you doing here? Link hurriedly tells Yunobo about what's happened. Yunobo is shocked to learn that Zelda has gone missing, and that the key to finding her might be in this fire temple. Yunobo thinks for a moment and notes that he hasn't seen anything of the sort down here, but there is a pathway blocked off by marbled rock. Sadly, Yunobo's strength alone isn't enough to break through. There is a new technique he's been working on that might do the trick, but it's hard for him to control. Yunobo then gets an idea. If Link can help direct him, the Goron might be able to break through. By pressing down on the D-pad, Link can have Yunobo start spinning in front of him and then launch forward as a destructive ball of flame. Yeah, it's basically the same power as the base game, so there's no need to elaborate here. Together, the two of them manage to break through the marbled rock obscuring their path, and uncover the door to the fire temple in the process. The door seems to react to Yunobo's presence, and slowly opens to allow access. So we're all agreed that the original fire temple was the worst dungeon in the game, right? Again, I'm not super confident in my ability to necessarily design a better dungeon, but I will at least say that I don't think anyone would complain about cutting out the minecarts, at least a little bit. Beyond that, feel free to reimagine this one however you like. Link and Yunobo descend deeper and deeper, until they arrive in the temple's basement. There, Marbled Goma is waiting for them. No real changes to note for this boss fight. I didn't think it was amazing in the original, but I didn't exactly hate it, so I guess we can keep the battle more or less the same. Once the boss is beaten, a sacred tear emerges and latches itself onto Yunobo's belt. Suddenly, his boulder breaker transforms into a massive flaming club called the Volcanic Shard, a weapon that can only be summoned by a sage, which hits with the force of Death Mountain itself erupting. It's so large that even a Goron needs to wield it two-handed. Whoa, what is this? I feel like my power is burning even hotter now. That is a sacred tear, proof of your awakening as a sage. What? Who are you? And where did you come from? Ah, right. Introductions. Allow me to explain. As usual, we cut forward to the end of Roru's explanation. Oh man, so Princess Zelda is trapped in this sacred realm place all alone? That's gotta be real scary. But we can use a realm gate to reach her, right? Correct. However, I fear the realm gate here is too badly damaged. In its present state, we won't be able to use it. Oh, but fear not. This venture was not in vain. The evil lurking in this temple has been destroyed, doubtless hindering Ganondorf's vile schemes. What's more, you have awakened as a sage, Yunobo. If you would be so willing, your power would be a tremendous asset to us in the battles ahead. My power? Well, if you're sure, then I'll definitely do what I can. Excellent. In that case, Link, Yunobo, please hold out your hands. Link and Yunobo do as instructed, allowing Rauru to perform another soul bond. Your spirits are now bound. We can now call upon the Sage of Fire at any time. I don't really get it, but I do feel the connection, Link. Yeah, if you ever need my help, I'll be there, even if I'm miles away. With marbled Goma destroyed, all the marbled rock begins to evaporate. Link and Yunobo hastily exit the volcano just as magma starts to flow again. They return to Goron City to find that everyone has more or less returned to normal. Now, Yunobo and his workers can resume mining operations, though Link still has an important task ahead of him: the search for Princess Zelda. The Gorons offer Link a place to rest and recover before he sets out on the next leg of his journey, and so he does. Shifting focus back over to Zelda, she has but one more major island to explore in the Sacred Realm: Nadi Island. The environment here is a vast desert, but not like the Gerudo Desert back in Hyrule. I'm thinking something more along the lines of, say, the Australian outback. This region will be abundant with bomb flowers and other hazardous materials, making it ideal for Zelda to farm combat-oriented items. After a long trek across Nadi Island, Zelda arrives at the Temple of the Boar, which Minoru tells her was once used to pit the strongest Zonai warriors against one another in a series of competitions to prove who was the mightiest of them all. Zelda will need to brace herself for many grueling battles ahead, especially since Ganondorf's influence seems particularly strong here. Zelda steels her resolve and steps forward, prepared to face whatever challenges may lie in her path. I'm envisioning this temple to be a bit less puzzle-oriented and more focused around combat challenges, pitting Zelda against monsters and corrupted Zonai constructs. Luckily, she won't have to go it alone, as there is something she can use to even the playing field. Hidden within the temple is a mystic scroll that grants Zelda the Zonai spell known as Break. With this, Zelda can instantly shatter destructible objects in her environment, including enemy weapons and shields. The caveat is that it can only be used 3 times in a row before needing to be recharged. Still, it should make dealing with some of the stronger adversaries in Zelda's way more bearable. Once Zelda reaches the end of the dungeon, she comes face to face with none other than the man responsible for all of this: Ganondorf. Or so it seems. Despite his shriveled, emaciated appearance, he still boasts quite a menacing aura as he turns to face Zelda. You've done well to make it this far, even if you only did so on borrowed power. Ganondorf, whatever you are planning, it won't work. Oh, and you think you are strong enough to stop me? I'll admit, there is potential within you, but you still hold yourself back. What are you talking about? Do not listen, Zelda. I sense this is not the real Ganondorf, but merely a phantom. So you need this sage to intervene on your behalf? You may be the heir to a kingdom, but you will never be its monarch. Not so long as you rely on others to fight your battles for you. Come, let me show you the strength required of a true ruler. So I imagine Phantom Ganon fighting not unlike how he does in the original game, summoning a variety of different weapons to combat you with. The first phase of the fight will be a pretty straightforward clash between him and Zelda. Zelda can destroy his weapons with Break, but doing so will only cause Phantom Ganon to summon another. Phantom Ganon will freely cycle from sword to club to spear to bow each time the spell is used on him during Phase 1. Thus, players may be better off conserving their break uses for now and focus on fighting him normally. During Phase 2, Phantom Ganon will split into 4 copies, each one wielding one of his weapons. Now, players can actually disrupt the boss with Break. For example, if you destroy the Sword Phantom's blade, he can't readily swap to a club because one of the other Phantoms has it. He'll be able to reform the sword eventually, but the swordsman phantom will be comparatively helpless until he does. Basically, players can use break to leave up to 3 of the phantoms weaponless for a time, so it's a matter of figuring out which ones you want to disarm and which one you can tolerate being on the offensive. Once all 4 clones are defeated, they reconvene into one, and explode into a pitch-black mist that washes over Zelda. It was no simple matter to divert the sage's attention away from my true aim. I roused monsters across Hyrule and had my thieves orchestrate a number of disasters. Ultimately, the other sages had no choice but to intervene, save for Queen Sonia, the Sage of Time. Somehow, be it through cunning or clairvoyance, she knew of my intentions, and stood against me in the sacred chamber where the Triforce was held. Queen Sonia was a formidable foe. Her mastery over time made it difficult to overcome her with brute force alone. Still, the difference between our martial prowess was clear. In the end, I cut through her tricks and dealt her a lethal blow. Before I could claim my prize, however, the Queen managed one last act of defiance against me. She unleashed all the power she could muster from her sacred tear to shatter the Triforce, sending 2 of its fragments forward through time. Sonia's dying words were a prophecy, a warning that I would be undone by those chosen to carry these fragments in the future. She claimed I would one day be bested by a princess of light and a warrior wielding a sacred sword. Certainly, I expected that these heroes, whoever they may be, might prove a challenge when they emerged. But my destiny is mine alone to create. I seized the final piece of the Triforce, and with it, I attained power unimaginable. Zelda takes a moment to catch her breath. She confronts Minoru about what she just saw, and Minoru reluctantly confirms that Zelda is indeed one of those chosen to wield a fragment of the Triforce. Queen Sonia glimpsed far into the future during her final moments, and chose one of her own descendants to receive this power during their time of need. That day, the day of the calamity, Zelda awakened to the light magic in her blood, passed down to her by King Rauru. With it, she was able to save Link and seal Calamity Ganon within Hyrule Castle for a century. But her light magic alone would not have been enough to perform such a miracle. Minoru tells Zelda that, in the moment of her awakening, the Triforce fragment appeared to amplify her magic. It is likely because of the Triforce's power that Zelda has also retained her youth, even after 100 years. Zelda has much to ponder. Not only did she inherit the magic and role of the Sage of Light, but she also possesses a fragment of the sacred relic that Ganondorf seeks. With it, Zelda wonders if she might be able to defeat the Demon King alone. Minoru states that it may be possible, but seems uneasy at the prospect. For now, though, their focus must remain on finding Ganondorf and a way back to Hyrule. As always, the defeat of the temple's boss leads Zelda to acquire another new power. This time, it's Flash Fire. Zelda can unleash a slow-moving projectile that travels in a straight line, which detonates either after traveling a certain distance or upon coming into contact with an enemy. The explosion's power and range are both roughly equivalent to a bomb flower. Unfortunately, the Realm Gate here is also broken. It seems as though returning to Hyrule may be impossible. However, Minoru informs Zelda that there is one more Realm Gate that they can look for. However, it's located within the Zonai Catacombs, a sacred place where her people are buried. Trespassing is usually considered forbidden, but given the situation, Minoru believes it may be the only option. Still, the sage seems rather hesitant to go there. Zelda asks where to find these catacombs, but Minoru informs her that it would first be wise to rest after her recent battle. Zelda relents, returning to the closest resting place in preparation for what lies ahead. We transition once more to Link. He has but one more temple to find, the Lightning Temple located in the Gerudo Desert. Unfortunately, the region has been beset by a horde of monsters known as Gibdos, who seem nigh impervious to traditional methods of attack. They appear in the midst of a choking sandstorm, making it extremely difficult to see, let alone fight them. What's more, these don't appear to be ordinary sandstorms. Lingering in them for too long seems to deplete one's health at a rapid pace. As in the original game, Link arrives to find Gerudo Town already nearly completely overrun. Unlike the original, though, Link will find the Gerudo already in the midst of fighting. There, we see Riju at the epicenter of the conflict, unleashing her newly awakened lightning powers on the beasts. She's a bit surprised to see Link at first, but greets him with a smile, musing aloud that the battle may have finally turned in their favor. Riju informs Link of the situation, that these creatures called Gibdos have infested the desert, overrunning many settlements with their sheer numbers. Gerudo Town is presently the last line of defense, and most civilians have been offered safety in the underground shelter. Even so, it's unlikely that Riju and her soldiers can hold down the fort for much longer, especially since they can barely breathe in the sand. Riju invites Link into the shelter, and while initially met with protests about allowing a man into the Gerudo safe haven, the chief dismisses such concerns. At present, they are in no condition to refuse help from anyone, regardless of tradition. The Gerudo seem to reluctantly accept this reasoning, at least for now. Riju allows Link to look around the shelter, inviting him to come speak with her in the war room once he's ready. Here, players can buy items and provisions as needed, and probably should. Upon talking to Riju again, players are informed that she sent scouting parties out into the desert to try to find where exactly the Gibdos are originating from. They've yet to return, and Riju can't afford to send any more troops out after them in case of another attack. Even if she could, the scouts were equipped with special gear meant to help them breathe in the sandstorm, and there's not enough left for a full squad. Thus, it falls to Link to set out in search of the scouting parties. Players are tasked with exploring the southwestern desert for clues. However, the area is infested with Gibdos and their cursed sandstorms. Riju suggests he go and speak to Buliara before setting out. She is currently standing atop the southwestern wall. Link finds Buliara atop the wall and relays Riju's request to her. In response, Buliara agrees to give him the Sandwalker armor, an experimental attire designed to help one breathe even amidst the thick dust clouds that seem to accompany the Gibdos. She also marks on his map the rough locations of where each scouting party was last seen before the dust cloud obscured them from view. With this, Link can set out in search for the missing Gerudo. Players will be tasked with visiting each of the 3 locations marked on the map and following a trail of clues. Rauru will chime in with comments at every location, noting signs of battle, discarded weapons, scratch marks on the rocks, and so on. Following the trails will lead Link to one of 3 scouting parties, who are actively being beset by the Gibdos. Link saves them, of course, and each party gives their thanks as well as a tidbit of information they were able to uncover. The first reports that the dust storm seems to grow even thicker the further one goes into the desert, but there appears to be some sort of massive structure rising out of the sands. The second report claims strange noises being heard before each wave of Gibdos, some sort of loud fluttering sound, accompanied by high-pitched screams. The third says that they believe the sandstorms accompanying the Gibdos are not actually sandstorms at all, but rather waves of toxic spores emitted by the monsters. Each scouting party then proceeds to make their way back to town once Link points them in the right direction. Rauru appears again to chime in that he suspects the massive structure the scouts spoke of may be the Lightning Temple, and that the progenitor of these Gibdos may have made that sacred place into its nest. To reach it, Link will surely need the aid of the Gerudo's military might, especially with so many enemies in the way. So in the original game, Link had to help set up defenses around Gerudo Town and fend off waves of Gibdos. That was a neat section, but we're going to put a cap on that idea for now. Instead, I'm putting the Gerudo on the offensive in my version of the story. Realizing that the town can't weather another major assault, Riju opts to instead destroy the swarm at its source before they can overrun Gerudo Town. Riju proposes a plan that her soldiers will face the Gibdos head-on in the open desert as a distraction. The front lines will be comprised of those wearing Sandwalker armor, while the rear will be taken up by cannoneers and archers. This should be enough to keep the Gibdo horde occupied, at least for a little while. Meanwhile, Link and Riju will sneak around and infiltrate the structure where the beasts are spawning from, putting an end to whatever vile monster the Gibdos serve. Players will be tasked with following Riju through the desert, following a route designed to circumvent the Gibdo horde while the Gerudo face the bulk of the enemy's forces. However, the two are still bound to encounter some enemies along the way. Luckily, Riju's lightning proves quite effective in piercing their abnormally thick hides. In fact, by pressing left on the D-pad, players can have Riju sync her lightning with Link's attacks. The next time Link hits an enemy, they'll be marked, as it were. A moment later, Riju will call down a bolt on that specific enemy, zapping them and any surrounding adversaries in the process. I wanted to tweak this power from what it was in the original game so that it didn't just require arrows to use. Plus, I always found it to be a little annoying to have to wait for Riju's charge to encompass an area. Soon enough, Link and Riju reach the temple's entrance, where the door mysteriously opens. From there, they simply head inside to face the heart of the swarm. So, I'll be honest here, I actually liked the Lightning Temple in the original game. It was far from the most amazing Zelda dungeon, but I think it was the best one in Tears of the Kingdom. As always, though, I'll leave the exact details of the temple to your imagination. The boss of the temple is, of course, the Queen Gibdo, who remains more or less unchanged. Riju and Link will work together to slay the beast and destroy its spawning mounds with lightning. Once the queen is dead, the sacred tear is released and it latches itself onto Riju. Furthermore, her blades transform into the Stormcleaver scimitars, weapons that can only be summoned by a sage, which electrocute enemies with every strike. What is this? At long last, the Sage of Lightning awakens. What did you just call me? And who are you? Fear not, I am not your enemy. Time is of the essence, so please, allow me to make this brief. As usual, we skip past the introduction. An ancient king of Hyrule, inhabiting Link's arm? Well, if what you say is true, then it seems you have further need of my aid. Indeed. I understand the Gerudo have something of an aversion to men, but as I said before, now is hardly the time to concern ourselves with such things. It would be my honor to fight alongside you both once again, both as Chief of the Gerudo and the Sage of Lightning. I should have expected no less from a warrior such as you. Now then, if you could, please hold out your hands toward one another. Rauru performs yet another soul bond. There we are. Your spirits are now bound, and the Sage of Lightning may come to our aid at any time. I see. Good. Then by all means feel free to call on me whenever you have need of my power. I shall be busy overseeing the reconstruction of Gerudo Town, but I shall not abandon allies in need. Alas, the realm gate here is also broken, meaning that there's nothing more to do in the temple. Link returns to Gerudo Town alongside Riju. The sandstorm has abated, and repairs are underway. Riju assures Link that he'll be welcome back at any time, and there will be no need to wear a disguise should he wish to enter the town. She promises him to aid in his mission however he can. All he need do is call upon her spirit. After leaving Gerudo Town, Rauru appears to comment on the current state of affairs. Unfortunately, all the realm gates they visited thus far are damaged beyond repair. There is, however, one final option: the Temple of Shadow. The trouble is that Rauru himself isn't sure where it might be. For now, he suggests that they return to Lookout Landing. Those researchers, Robbie and Purah, may be able to help. With no other options available to him, Link does as Rauru suggests. He returns to Lookout Landing, now occupied by troops from all across Hyrule, and approaches Purah. There, Link explains the current situation. Purah is somewhat distraught to learn that the realm gates are all broken, but promises to do what she can to look into the Temple of Shadow. The research teams across Hyrule have been hard at work studying ancient Zonai relics and texts, so surely there must be something of note there. In fact, Purah recalls that the Sheikah in Kakariko village reported finding something odd not too long ago. It's not much, but Link now has his next destination. As ever, he'll be offered a place to rest first. But we're not going to be switching over to Zelda quite yet. Instead, I'm going to take this opportunity to introduce a side quest. Back in the Gerudo shelter, Link can get the 7 Heroines quest as before. These mysterious Gerudo warriors are a major part of the region's lore, but we never really get to learn much about them in the original game. We know there was an 8th heroine who was actually secretly an unnamed Hylian male, but yeah, I never really cared for the so-called resolution of this plotline. So we're going to be revamping it. Speaking to Rotana reveals that she's uncovered some old texts about these heroines, and a great battle they once partook in centuries ago, as well as a mysterious 8th heroine who appears to have been nearly forgotten to time. Rotana wishes to learn the truth of this 8th heroine and why she seems to have been neglected by history. Link is asked to help look into the matter, and accepting the quest puts him on the path to the northern Gerudo ruins. There, he'll find a secret passage that can be exposed with the help of Ultra Hand. Descending the newly unveiled stairs reveals a whole subset of underground passages, some of which will be blocked off by destructible stone. Venturing even further brings Link to a large room with a curious stone stela. Though much of the text is faded beyond readability, Link is able to barely make out the details. The stela describes a great battle between the Gerudo and some mysterious faction residing in the northern Gerudo highlands. Suddenly, Rauru appears, stating that the northern Gerudo highlands were once where Ganondorf staked his territory. It's possible that further details of this ancient battle may be found here in the remnants of Ganondorf's old stronghold. Rauru is able to point Link in the direction of said stronghold, though it might prove to be a familiar location to players, the Yiga clan hideout. Indeed, the same place where Master Koga had once made his base of operation was, in fact, at one time, the very place where Ganondorf and his band of thieves had made their home. After Koga's defeat and apparent demise in Breath of the Wild, the Yiga have vacated this place, and monsters have taken up residence instead. Yeah, I haven't really touched on that at all, have I? We'll get into exactly what happened to the Yiga clan in my version later, but all you need to know right now is that they are no longer occupying their old hideout. In the 5 years since Koga's apparent death and the defeat of the calamity they worshipped as a god, it's kind of wild to me that the Yiga could even continue to exist and operate as they have. You'd at least think that someone would have dealt with these troublemakers' hideout. So, yes, we're going to say that the remnants of the Yiga have cleared out and moved elsewhere. We can get back to the details of that a different time. Venturing deeper into the Yiga clan hideout, Link is able to reach areas and uncover hidden passages with his Zonai spells that were inaccessible to him in Breath of the Wild. This eventually brings him into the Forsaken Fortress, a section of Ganondorf's old base that remains untouched by Yiga interference. The place is infested with high-level monsters, including Gibdos, but exploring further will yield records of Ganondorf's life. The author of these texts is unknown, but they appear relatively recent compared to the rest of the fortress. The records tell that, long ago, a mighty warlord by the name of Bolbaros plagued the Gerudo Desert. He was ruthless and cruel, laying waste to any and all that dared to defy him. Some stories even claim that his strength was given to him by a pair of witches who dabbled in the vilest of magics. After many years of his terrible reign, 8 Gerudo heroines stepped forth to oppose him: Mahara, Hala, Tamul, Merifa, Rilat, Haraka, Latif, and Sarun. The 8 heroines faced Bolbaros and his forces in an epic clash here within the Gerudo Highlands. forcing him to retreat. Sarun alone gave chase, and it was believed that she perished by Bulbaros' hand. Even so, her sacrifice allowed the other heroines to rout what remained of Bulbaros' forces. And so, a statue of Sarun was erected here in the Highlands to honor her sacrifice. Bulbaros himself was left with little more than a small band of dedicated followers, among whom was a young Gerudo male, a once-in-a-century occurrence. Bulbaros roamed the desert with his followers for some years, now little more than a common bandit. It is said that when the Gerudo boy came of age, he challenged Bulbaros to a duel for control of the band. The young Gerudo emerged victorious, but spared Bulbaros' life. Now, under new leadership, the bandits bolstered their ranks, slowly but surely rising back to their former prominence. In time, the desert came to fear a new name, Ganondorf, the King of Thieves. With Bulbaros now serving as Ganondorf's general, they seized control of the highlands once more, establishing this very fortress. General Bulbaros fought for many years under Ganondorf's new banner, but was eventually felled when monsters beset the fortress. That is as far as the records go. When Link is finished going through all the records, Rauru emerges to commentate on the matter. He had heard stories of the infamous Bulbaros in life, but never realized that he and Ganondorf shared such a connection. Rauru finds it most curious, and wonders what fate really befell the heroine Sarun after she chased after the tyrant. Perhaps it is for the best that history never learns the full truth. Regardless, Link returns to report his findings to Rotana. Once that quest is complete, he finds a place to rest, and we finally switch perspectives once again. Zelda makes her way back to the place where she first entered the sacred realm. There, she finds an ancient stone door overrun with moss and vine. Minoru informs Zelda that in order to enter the sacred burial ground, she'll need to have gained the blessings of all three guardian spirits. Luckily, Zelda has already done so by completing each of the prior three temples. This is really just a way to lock players out from coming here too early. Zelda steps forward and places a hand on the door. It lights up with green runes, and a mysterious voice bids her welcome. Zelda takes a deep breath and descends into the tomb, which is illuminated by mystical green flames burning on the walls. It's a place that evokes a sense of both awe and dread at once. Minoru seems particularly displeased to be here, but before Zelda can inquire as to why, shuffling figures emerge from the darkness. Minoru looks on in horror. The monsters look vaguely like Zonai, but their bodies are shriveled and they have ominous masks affixed to their faces. The creatures are slow, but they let out a piercing scream that paralyzes Zelda if she dares to get too close. There can be only one name for this enemy: Redeads. Despite how menacing these abominations are, Zelda and Minoru manage to defeat them by focusing their attacks on the Redeads' masks. Minoru urges Zelda to hurry, and so she does, making her way further into the ancient burial site. As usual, I leave the overall design of the dungeon to your imagination, but it should definitely require use of all the Zonai spells Zelda has acquired by now. Speaking of Zonai spells, Zelda can acquire a new Mystic Scroll here, which grants her the ability to use Summon. This allows her to temporarily summon a large Zonai golem to ride around on, which can walk over hazards and even attack enemies for her. Basically, it's Minoru's construct from the original game, but more magical looking and ideally not as kinda useless to use, let's be real. Also, the golem is immune to Redead screams. I also think it would be neat if the place was filled with murals and monuments depicting Zonai history and culture. Give the world-building crowd something to chew on. Anyways, Zelda makes her way deeper and deeper into the tomb, until she finds the door that takes her to the Realm Gate. To her surprise, it actually seems to be active. However, there is a lone, upright coffin standing at the far end of the room. Minoru's spirit emerges and stares at it uncomfortably. Zelda inquires as to what the problem is, but Minoru seems hesitant to answer. Just then, a wicked shadow flies overhead, laughing maniacally. It unleashes tendrils of darkness into the coffin, before landing in the center of the room. The shadows coalesce, and Ganondorf emerges. Zelda is aghast, and Minoru confirms that this one is no phantom. I thank you for opening the door for me. My power is nearly restored, and now the time has come for me to return to Hyrule. A pity you won't be joining me. Ganondorf slams his hand down on the ground, and as before, activates the Realm Gate before promptly destroying it. It all happens too fast for either Zelda or Minoru to do anything. Across the room, the coffin begins to crack and ooze with darkness. Minoru, distressed, rushes toward it in a desperate bid to stop its contents from breaking forth. Alas, she is too late. Wicked power engulfs the sage's spirit, and the Master Sword clatters to the ground. Zelda reaches out her hand, but when the darkness subsides, the coffin is gone. In its place is Minoru, but something is off. The Zonai is no longer a spirit, but her body is wreathed in a malevolent aura, and a grotesque mask is affixed to her face. Zelda calls out Minoru's name in distress, but the Sage of Spirit struggles to answer. Zelda, run. Now a re-dead, the Sage of Spirit is unable to hold herself back. She lets out a burst of corrupted soul energy that cracks the floor of the chamber, before lashing out at Zelda. Players will have to fight this boss without the aid of Minoru's powers, obviously. Possessed Minoru will fight by launching waves of spiritual power at Zelda, calling in re-dead knights, and trying to afflict Zelda with confusion. The fight will be a tough one, but luckily, Summon can make the battle a bit more bearable. Once Minoru is halfway beaten, she starts to struggle. Minoru, come to your senses, please! Zelda, you have to kill me. No, I won't. I refuse to do that to a friend. Fight it, Minoru. Suddenly, the Triforce symbol on Zelda's hand begins to glow. She takes a deep breath, focuses her power, and unleashes a wave of sacred light at the re-dead. The monster cries out, its mask cracking, and Minoru's spirit is set free. Minoru thanks Zelda, which earns a relieved sigh from the princess. However, the fight isn't done yet. Even without her spirit, Minoru's body is still possessed by dark forces. Suddenly, the creature raises its arm and manifests a shield made of reflective metal. Minoru scowls. That is the Soul Gazer shield, a special weapon which can only be conjured by a sage. It reflects magical attacks back at their user, and now the re-dead has it. The fight resumes and Minoru takes possession of the Master Sword once more. She urges Zelda to unleash her toward the re-dead. Zelda is hesitant, but Minoru insists that she won't be overcome again. Indeed, it may be the only way, as Zelda finds it difficult to get past the monster's guard, given that most of her attacks are now reflected right back at her. Using Minoru's possession ability, the Sage of Spirit is able to once again briefly regain control of her own body. This allows her to drop the shield and grant Zelda the opportunity to attack. Eventually, though, Minoru's spirit is ejected, and players will have to wait for another opportunity to try again. Eventually, Minoru possesses the re-dead one final time, leaving Zelda an opening to deal the final blow. The monster cries out as its mask shatters, before falling silently to the ground. Suddenly, a cloud of darkness erupts, and Zelda gets yet another vision. The Demon King. That is what they called me. My might was unrivaled. I was a sage bearing a sacred tear, as well as a fragment of the Triforce. Yes, even with but a fragment of that sacred relic, there were none who could oppose me. Armies trembled at my might, monsters bent to my will. I saw things clearly for the first time, forsaking any foolish sentiment I may have once held. I was well on my way to becoming the king I was destined to be. I would not simply conquer this realm, but that of the Zonai as well. I would tear them both down, and build a new world from their collective ashes.
But, of course, the other sages stood against me. Individually, their strength was no match for mine, but together they proved surprisingly resilient. Our struggle raged across both realms, before finally culminating in the Temple of Light. There, the sages made their final desperate stand against me. They fought well, but it wasn't enough. That is, until the Queen's gambit came through. Just as I was prepared to give Rauru a warrior's death, a piece of the Triforce appeared before him. Rauru grasped it, and for a fleeting moment I thought that he would do as I had, ascend to godhood. He had all he needed, but instead, to my shock, the fool chose the path of self-sacrifice. The other sages created an opening, and Rauru took the opportunity to bury his hand into my chest. He gave his own life to cast a seal upon me, ensuring that I would remain trapped in that place for ages to come. But it mattered not. He only delayed the inevitable. My malice would fester until it became a calamity unto itself, preparing Hyrule for my inevitable return. Now, the time has come at last to finish what I began so long ago. Zelda returns to reality to find the Re-Dead and Minoru both gone. Only the sacred tear of spirit is there, lying on the floor. Zelda calls out Minoru's name questioningly, then again a bit louder. She rushes over to the tear and kneels down, scooping it up in her hand. She calls out Minoru's name again, fearing the worst. Suddenly, the tear floats up and hovers in the air. Minoru's spirit manifests once again. I am all right, Zelda. Don't frighten me like that. My apologies. I didn't mean to make you worry. Why are you apologizing? That was... you were... My body was stored here long ago, after I chose to inhabit the Master Sword. I'm sorry. I should have said something, but... No, that mustn't have been easy for you. I cannot begin to imagine how it must feel to see your own body in such a state. But now it's gone. What will happen to you? I didn't even consider... It's all right, Zelda. I'll be fine. More importantly, Minoru glances toward the realm gate. It seems Ganondorf has rendered the gateway useless. I'm such a fool. I should have known he would be plotting something like this. We opened the door for him. No. Then, does that mean... I'm afraid that it does. It may be possible to repair the gate, but it would take time. More than we have, I fear. Ganondorf has returned to Hyrule, and his power is nearly restored to what it once was. No. Zelda. Zelda falls to her knees and despair begins to overwhelm her, until she has an epiphany. Minoru, tell me something. Ganondorf, he possesses the power of a god, correct? Yes, but where is this coming from? I saw it. In the visions. The magic of a sage, a sacred tear to bolster it, and a fragment of the Triforce. These three things are what transformed him into the Demon King, and allowed him to nearly overtake both realms long ago. And now I have them as well, do I not? I am the Sage of Light, inheritor of King Rauru's sacred tear, and a bearer of the Triforce shard entrusted to me by Queen Sonia. With them I could... Zelda, stop. You mustn't. Why not? That path is a dangerous one. To become a god is to cast aside one's own sense of self. So much power warps one's perspective, as it did for Ganondorf. Are you saying I would become a monster like him? No, but you would no longer be you, Zelda. Your kindness, your compassion, your love for learning and discovery, all of that would be lost. So please, you mustn't. It would be far too cruel. Then what do you propose I do? Minoru, Ganondorf's strength has nearly returned. I can feel it. With each vision, I can tell that his power is growing stronger. If we do not stop him, he will destroy Hyrule in its entirety. I can do nothing against him, trapped as I am in this place. Zelda, remember, you need not shoulder that burden alone. You have friends and allies in Hyrule. Link and the others won't fall to Ganondorf so easily. And, of course, I will do all within my power to aid you as well. But how can they possibly stand against him, Minoru? Link, he does not even have the Master Sword. The Master Sword? Ah, of course. What is it? Zelda, though we may not be able to return to Hyrule ourselves, we can still aid them. There is a way to send the sacred sword back to its wielder. Truly? But how? For now, let us return above ground. I'll explain more once we've left this place. Very well. I am counting on you, Minoru.
We cut back to Link, who is abruptly visited by a Korok messenger. The Korok asks Link to visit the Great Deku Tree as soon as possible. However, Link has other priorities right now, so we'll worry about that later. For now, he makes his way to Kakariko to speak with Paya, the new village chief. Though she's a little flustered by his arrival at first, Paya quickly calms herself and focuses on the matter at hand. Paya informs Link that there are, in fact, very old texts about something called the Shadow Temple. It was, apparently, considered a forbidden place and hidden away long ago. It was said that the people of Dia village once knew more, but they were all wiped out during the Great Calamity. Still, if Link truly wishes to learn more, he might seek answers hidden amongst the ruins. At this point, Link can either make for Dia village or the Korok Forest, but we're going to focus on the latter. Players will, of course, have to navigate through the Lost Woods, but the Great Deku Tree and his forest children welcome the hero once he reaches the heart of their sacred grove. The Deku Tree greets Link, as well as the spirit bound to him. Rauru replies in turn, stating that it is an honor to finally make the acquaintance of the mighty guardian of the forest. The Deku Tree reciprocates the feeling. It has been a long time, he says, since he last spoke with the Zonai. What? You mean Zonai have come to this place before? Yes. Long ago, a Zonai sage visited this place to enact a daring plan. A Zonai sage? Ah, you can't mean... Indeed. It was none other than the Sage of Spirit, your own kin, King Rauru. So Minoru managed to make it through the Lost Woods. Ha! Somehow that hardly comes as a surprise. But why? Why would she come here? She sought the ancient blade that I was appointed to watch over, believing that it may one day be required to combat the Demon King's return. The ancient blade? Ah, yes, your sword, Link. The one that was lost to you at the moment of Ganondorf's awakening. I saw how its power repelled his malice. Minoru was right to seek it out. She did more than that, O ancient king. For millennia, the sage's spirit has slumbered within the Master Sword, intending to guide its destined wielder to slaying the source of all calamity. What? Minoru placed her own soul within the blade. But that means... Indeed. Your kin's spirit lingers still, much like your own. Even now, she watches over the princess within the sacred realm. Link takes note of this, and the Deku Tree responds in kind. Yes, great hero. Zelda is still alive and well. Even trapped in that place, she works to undermine the Demon King's machinations, just as you do here. As ever, your paths are bound, even worlds apart. I see. It seems those two boast even greater resolve than I had realized. But how do you know all of this, Great Spirit?
You are not the only one with kin in that world, O ancient king. My counterpart and I join roots even across the realms. Truly, I never knew. Link, hear me. Though I cannot allow you passage into that other world, my counterpart and I can offer a small miracle. Your princess seeks to return that which is rightfully yours, the Master Sword. To retrieve it, you must enter my network of roots and delve into its deepest reaches. Furthermore, you must also send a gift unto her, an exchange across realms. So to retrieve the Master Sword, we must offer something of our own. I understand. Link, let us be off. I think I know exactly what we can give Zelda in exchange. With that, the Deku Tree opens his mouth and Link steps through it. The perspective now switches back to Zelda, and for the time being, players will be unable to switch. I should note, however, that it would theoretically be possible to initiate this quest line with her first. Zelda wakes up from her rest, and Minoru is floating nearby. Players will talk with her to initiate the quest from Zelda's perspective. Minoru informs the princess to head to Orifera Island. There they may find someone who can help them. Zelda does as requested, following Minoru's guidance to the southernmost part of the island. A large gateway bars the path, watched over by the Minish. Minoru appears before them, and the Minish are shocked to see her. The sage requests an audience with the holy tree, and the Minish oblige. As the gate opens, Minoru informs Zelda that she is actually a friend of the Minish. In fact, that's roughly what her name translates into. Not really a necessary detail, but I thought it would be cool to open up possibilities for world building with the Zonai language that people could actually read and speak. Not unlike Hylian. Min can translate into spirit, and Eru can mean something like friend or ally. Zelda is intrigued, but there's no time to discuss the matter further. Once the gate opens, she steps through it into the massive grove filled with flowers. At the center of the grove is a massive tree covered in gorgeous blossoms. More notable than that, though, is that the tree boasts a face, and even speaks a greeting to her visitors. Zelda instantly makes the comparison to the Deku tree, but Minoru corrects her, saying that this is actually the Maku tree. Indeed, I am the protector of this sacred grove. I oversee the Minish in this realm, not unlike how your Deku Tree watches over the Koroks in Hyrule. If it helps, you may think of me as his sister, in a way. I see. I never knew the Deku Tree had a sister. Forgive my interruption, great Maku Tree, but we have need of your aid. Oh, I am well aware. A wicked power stirs, spreading its twisted influence across two worlds. My other half has informed me that things are somewhat dire in Hyrule. Well, they were, until recently. What do you mean? Terrible calamities befell the people of Hyrule not long after the Demon King's awakening, not unlike how his power has corrupted this realm's temples. However, thanks to you and a noble warrior, the Demon King's efforts have been stifled on both fronts. A noble warrior? Ah, Link! My other half and I have kept a close eye on your deeds, relaying information between us all this time. You can communicate with the Deku Tree. How? The Maku Tree and Deku Tree are powerful guardian deities, whose roots stretch deep into the very fabric of the realms. There they can join, allowing them to speak across worlds. What? That's incredible! But then, does that mean you have the power to send me back to Hyrule? I am afraid that I cannot do. Conveying a soul beyond the barrier of worlds in one piece is a difficult task even for the two of us. However, it is possible for us to convey gifts to one another. Gifts? Ah, I understand. So that is your plan, Minoru. Yes. Great Maku Tree, would you be so kind as to relay the Master Sword to your other half? and have him deliver it to Link. It is possible. However, you would have to travel deep into my root system and pass the sword off at the place where the realms converge. Unfortunately, the other party must relay a gift of their own to the sender. Link must give me a gift, but I have no need. These are the conditions that must be met, Princess. It is not a matter of want or choice, but simply the way of things. Truthfully, I should think you would be thrilled to receive a gift from someone like him.
Zelda looks away with a faint blush on her face. Minoru clears her throat.
But how can we be certain that Link will know to come and perform the exchange? My other half will handle that. For now, come, delve deep into my root system, and make ready your offering.
The Maku tree raises herself up a bit, allowing Zelda to descend into the depths of Orifera Island. Now she and Link are both on their way to complete the exchange. Here we have a mini dungeon of sorts that will involve alternating between Link and Zelda. The two of them will need to navigate the labyrinth of twisting roots and plant life beneath each of their sacred trees, delving deeper and deeper until they both reach the bottom. There they will find what appears to be a large pool of reflective water, in which Link and Zelda can both see each other's hazy reflections. Unfortunately, neither one can actually communicate with each other, but they each seem to understand what it is they must do. Rauru instructs Link to remove Sonia's sacred tear from her staff. Its power will still function even without a vessel. This, the weapon of a sage and queen, is to be the offering made in exchange for retrieving the blade of a hero. Link nods and does as instructed, setting Sonia's staff into the water. Zelda, on her end, does the same with the Master Sword. Minoru's soul is presently untethered from it, so she simply hovers back and watches. Sure enough, the trade goes through. Link receives the Master Sword, while Zelda receives Sonia's staff. The two share a silent look at each other before their reflections fade away. The Master Sword, I think, is fairly self-explanatory. It deals tremendous damage to monsters and unleashes sword beams whenever Link is at full health. It doesn't break like other weapons, but it does still have to recharge after extensive use. Sonia's staff, meanwhile, will replace the Master Sword as Minoru's vessel going forward. You might think that's something of a downgrade, but remember, Minoru was technically never able to properly wield the blade. She could use it as a weapon on technicality by making it move with her abilities, but Minoru could not properly tap into the Master Sword's sacred power, thus meaning that its damage output against monsters was severely nerfed, hardly anything more than a regular sword. Sonia's staff, however, is a bit different. Forged from extremely durable material and equipped with serrated wing-like fixtures, it functions quite well as a striking weapon even if that was never its intended use. At the very least, its damage output is reasonably higher than the Master Sword's while serving as Minoru's vessel. And of course, Zelda can still launch Minoru's spirit from the staff to have her possess other things as well. Link and Zelda will ascend back up from the Sacred Tree's root system. Players will be given control of whoever they were playing as last before the swap. If it's Link, they'll be urged to go and investigate the Dia Village ruins. If it's Zelda, she'll spot a massive plume of dark energy far to the south. It appears to be coming from a smaller island not connected to any of the main three, but it's much more intense than any of the other dark plumes she's seen before. This is especially curious, considering that Ganondorf appeared to have left the Sacred Realm. Minoru urges Zelda to be cautious, but this warrants investigating if nothing else. For now, we'll switch back over to Link again. When players venture to Dia Village, they'll find that the place has been inhabited by the remnants of the Yiga clan. This ruined village has become their new stronghold, and despite their weakened numbers, the Yiga have the place heavily fortified. Link goes back to report this matter to Paya. She mulls it over for a moment, then tells Link to go speak with Dorian. Dorian listens to Link's situation, and understands fully well why Paya sent Link to him. He used to be a member of the Yiga clan himself, after all, and still has his old attire hidden in his home.
Dorian agrees to let Link have it as a means of infiltrating Dia village and learning what exactly is transpiring there. Now properly adorned in Yiga attire, Link is able to sneak his way inside and walk among the actual members of the clan. He still has to be somewhat stealthy in his approach, but after snooping around, Link is able to find a Yiga diary that details the present state of things. After Koga's demise 5 years ago, the Yiga clan was lost and without purpose. Moreover, the Gerudo made a concentrated effort to clear out the Yiga clan's base while they were scrambling to figure out what to do. It was then that some members of the Yiga discovered the hidden passages of an ancient fortress deep beneath their base. For half a decade, they've been researching these ruins and uncovering the story of its former master, Lord Ganondorf. Alas, the Yiga eventually had to leave their home due to the enemies on their doorstep, leaving some of their research notes behind in the process. However, they took with them a map said to lead to a place sacred to the King of Thieves. This map led them to Necluda, and the area now known as the Dia village ruins. The Yiga scoured the ruins in secret, and eventually came across an old manuscript that appears to have belonged to the village's former elder. It claims that an entrance to the Temple of Shadow is hidden somewhere in the area, but thus far no one has been able to find it.
Luckily, Link is able to use his Zonai abilities to explore pathways the Yiga cannot. After descending a ways into the depths beneath the village, players will come across an ominous-looking door sealed with powerful magic. Similar to the other temples, it doesn't seem as though the door will open unless exposed to the presence of its corresponding sage. Before Link can try to find another way in, he gets an emergency call from Purah.
She informs him that a massive horde of monsters is approaching Lookout Landing from Hyrule Field. He needs to get back ASAP, or the entire place is bound to be overrun. Link warps back to Lookout Landing, where everyone is hard at work trying to prepare their defenses for the incoming horde of monsters. Rito, Zora, Goron, and Gerudo troops have all gathered to aid their Hylian allies, but it's bound to be a tough fight. If it weren't obvious, this is where I'm moving the Gerudo town defense segment to. Now, you're having to protect the main hub instead. Link will be tasked with assigning soldiers to their posts, as well as preparing various defenses like cannons and barriers. Side note, there's a really interesting video by The Bread Pirate breaking down Lookout Landing's actual capabilities as a defensible area, and yeah, it's not really great once you actually stop and break it all down. I think having Lookout Landing start with some basic defenses and then having players set up the rest during the monster invasion would be pretty cool. When players are ready and satisfied with their defensive setup, as well as properly stocked up, they need only talk to Purah and Robbie and the siege of Lookout Landing will begin. This segment is fairly straightforward overall. Monsters approach from the south, east, and west, and Link will have to do what he can to help fend them off. Waves will grow increasingly tough, both with more enemies and stronger variants as time passes. After all the waves are beaten, a lookout on the wall reports something massive approaching from the south. A horned figure rides forth on a black horse with a blazing red mane. In one hand he carries a ferocious battle axe, and his entire body oozes with malice. The figure announces himself as General Bobaros, brought back to life to serve the mighty Ganondorf once more. He bellows out a challenge for Hyrule's strongest warrior to come forth and face him, lest he charge forth and tear this pitiful excuse of a fortress to the ground. Naturally, it's Link who answers the call. Players will have to talk to the local stable masters before setting out, though. Yes, we're doing a mounted boss fight. Link and the General will ride through Hyrule Field, exchanging blows atop their respective mounts. There are no real gimmicks to this fight, just a straightforward clash between two skilled warriors on horseback, using whatever means they have available to them. General Bulbaros can unleash dark projectiles, try to get in close with his axe, and may even summon temporary shields to protect his flanks. Have you figured out who this guy is referencing yet? Once the general has taken enough damage, his horse dissipates. Link dismounts to fight Bulbaros in a one-on-one clash, though the general's hulking frame strikes an imposing figure. Regardless, Link can now call upon the power of the sages to assist him, should players feel so inclined. I'd like to imagine Bulbaros might even have different dialogue depending on whether or not Link actually does. With sages. Though I may fall here, my lord never will. Without sages, I respect only one thing: strength. Lord Ganon awaits you, champion. Go and fight well.
With General Bulbaros's defeat and the monster threat quelled for the time being, Link's next destination is clear. Rauru appears to speculate that this attack was nothing more than a means for Ganondorf to slip back into his temple and buy himself time to finish recovering his former strength. If the Sage of Shadow is truly waiting for them now, then the door to his temple should now be opened.
Link, our adversary is just ahead, no doubt guarding the final realm gate. Make sure you're thoroughly prepared, and that you leave no unfinished business unattended. Once you step foot into the temple, there will be no turning back. And so it is that we reach the point of no return for Link. I hardly think I need to spell out what that means. Before we proceed, though, we must return to the Sacred Realm and continue with Zelda's side of things. If players try to enter the Temple of Shadow before finishing her story, they'll be sent over to her as soon as they step inside. Switching back over to Zelda, the new dark beacon beckons her closer. Minoru warns Zelda that now would probably be a good time to resolve any unfinished business she may have here in the Sacred Realm. It seems highly possible that once they approach the Dark Presence, there may be no further opportunities to do so. So yes, if it weren't obvious, this will be Zelda's point of no return. Returning to the realm's center, Zelda will find a bridge of rubble that seems to be held together by strange magic waiting for her. The bridge will lead her somewhere that has thus far been inaccessible, Ilya Island. Minoru informs her that this is actually where she and Rauru were born. The architecture here looks as though it had once been pristine, though it has long since started succumbing to the ravages of time. Zelda must make her way through the ruins, using all the abilities at her disposal. Consider this one final mini-dungeon for her to complete. Eventually, the princess arrives before a lone altar, where the dark energy is emanating from. Once Zelda gets near enough, the darkness erupts forward and engulfs her completely. Suddenly, Zelda finds herself in a familiar location: the Astral Observatory in Hyrule Castle. What? I'm back. Welcome home, Zelda. Zelda gasps to hear a familiar voice. She turns around to see none other than King Roam standing before her. Father! What is it, Zelda? You look as though you've seen a ghost. But this must be a trick. You... Suddenly, four more familiar figures walk into the room behind King Roam. Urbosa, Rivali, Mipha, and Daruk move to stand on either side of the king. There you are, little bird. We've been looking everywhere for you, princess. It's been a while, but somehow you seem no worse for wear. Well, what did you expect? She is Hyrule's crown princess, after all. Yes, still a princess. She hasn't changed one bit. Zelda backs away uncertainly. What are you all doing here? How are you here? This can't be happening. You all... died? Yes, we did. You couldn't save us in time, Zelda. You failed to realize your full potential then, and you still do even now. As one, the king and the four champions walk closer. They lambast Zelda for failing in her duties over a century ago, for her weakness and hesitations. In the end, all you did was hide yourself away here in this very room. Couldn't do a thing without that knight by your side, huh? Trapped in a cage of your own design. And yet you get to continue living while we paid the price. This isn't real. None of you are real. The champions, my father, they wouldn't... Perhaps we're not real, but your failures certainly are. A weak princess raised by a fool of a king. Let me remind you of your shortcomings. The five shades turn into wisps of darkness and congeal together. From them emerges a being formed of pure malice, Calamity Ganon. Well, not exactly. It's a smaller, more humanoid manifestation, not quite on par with the entity that ravaged Hyrule over 100 years ago. Even so, this malicious shade is not to be taken lightly. I imagine its fighting style to be reminiscent of Calamity Ganon and Hyrule Warriors, transforming its limbs into weapons and spreading malice around the area that it can detonate. Zelda will, for the time being, be unable to call on Minoru for help. She must fight the malicious shade alone, at first. Once Zelda takes about a fourth of the boss's HP, the illusion is dispelled, and Zelda finds herself back in the Zonai ruins. Minoru inquires as to her well-being, but before Zelda can respond, the malicious shade reappears, now bigger and even more furious than before. Minoru is aghast. She recognizes all too clearly the similarity this creature has to the great calamity of ages past. The observatory must have been an illusion, but the malicious shade is not. They must stop the creature here, before it can grow to its proper strength. The two sages fight valiantly. Minoru is once again able to aid Zelda, attacking the shade with Sonia's staff and even allowing Zelda to use her possession ability once again. The latter will be useful as the malicious shade summons weaker monster to do its bidding. Zelda can likewise make use of all her Zonai spells. Bounce to evade shock waves, Sink to avoid a charge attack, and Break to destroy the shade's weapon arms. Summon can also prove useful for evening the playing field in terms of pure strength. When the boss's health bar finally reaches 0, it drops to one knee, scowling angrily. Suddenly, the phantoms from before are back, hurling their accusations at Zelda. How she's a weak ruler who can't achieve anything without the aid of others, a failure of a sage who's too timid for the burden she carries, and a naive fool for thinking she could ever amount to anything. As Zelda tries to drown out these voices, the shade lunges forth, taking advantage of the opening. Minoru intervenes, using Sonia's staff to try and block the incoming blow. Minoru's spirit manifests, telling Zelda not to pay these voices any mind. She's more than proven herself worthy of the throne. However, the malicious shade manages to push through Minoru's defense, shattering Sonia's staff and striking the sacred tear. The tear cracks, and Minoru's spirit suddenly vanishes. Zelda cries out in despair as the relic bounces along the ground to land at her feet. Zelda kneels to pick it up, only to be swatted aside by the malicious shade. She hits a nearby pillar and bounces off of it, landing unceremoniously on the ground. Zelda struggles to her knees as the malicious shade looms closer, cackling as though amused by her weakness. Zelda mutters to herself, "I'm sorry, Minoru. I'm not strong enough as I am. Even so, I cannot falter." Zelda slowly rises to her feet, clutching the sacred tear at her neck with her right hand. "No matter what it costs me, it is my duty to defend Hyrule and all of its people. I won't allow any more lives to be taken." The malicious shade raises its arm, ready to crush Zelda. In that moment, the Triforce symbol on her right hand begins to glow. "I must protect them all!" A golden light explodes forth, consuming the shade in its entirety. The light spreads further, bathing all of Ilya Island in its radiance. At the center of the light stands a lone silhouetted figure, her back facing the camera. Zelda has ascended. The narrative now returns to Link. If players haven't done the Lookout Landing defense mission before Zelda's finale, they'll be required to do so. The story from this point forward will focus on Link making his way through the Shadow Temple. As ever, I ultimately leave the details of the temple to your imagination, but it would naturally make use of all the powers and abilities Link has acquired thus far to traverse it. Finally, Link emerges before a large, ominous gate, behind which Rauru warns is likely the Realm Gate, and their adversary, Ganondorf. Rauru warns that there is also a powerful suppressing magic in place. It may be impossible to call on the other sages for aid once inside. Both Link and Rauru steel themselves for what is ahead, and Link pushes through the door. Link steps into the heart of the Shadow Temple, where Ganondorf awaits him atop a high altar at the far end of the room. Having finally regained his human form, the King of Thieves speaks to the hero. "So, you have come this far. Impressive." You're more persistent than I expected. An admirable trait, but one all too rare among your kind. Ganondorf conjures shadowy apparitions of the bosses Link has defeated thus far. Time and again I have ravaged this land with calamities. And how do its people respond? They run. They hide. They cower and beg for salvation. They turn to you. Ganondorf gestures toward Link as the apparitions fade. You think you've saved them? No. You've only reassured them of their own complacency. That come what may, a champion will always arrive to fight the battles they cannot. Ganondorf begins to descend the stairs. Hyrule is weak, its people cowardly. I aim to change that. I will remake this world stronger than ever before. These mewling weaklings can do nothing to stop me. The only thing standing in my way is you. You, who draws your blade in defiance against me, who does not flee as so many others would in my presence. So tell me, Ganondorf points a finger at Link, what is it that sets you apart? From where do you draw your courage? I fight to defend everyone and everything I hold dear. I see. Then I will strip you of all that you cherish. I will shatter your resolve and the last line of resistance with it. Come then, hero. I will give you a fitting end. The first phase of Link's battle with Ganondorf will not be too dissimilar to his first phase in the original game. Ganondorf will fight primarily by summoning different weapons comprised of dark energy. His blade, blow, club, and naginata. It's a fairly straightforward duel, demanding a simple test of skill from the players. Once Ganondorf's first health bar is depleted, he staggers back and grins. Impressive. You are a worthy opponent. Once, you may have even been able to best me. However, this is where you and your world meet their end! Ganondorf slams his hand against the sacred tear on his forehead. The Triforce symbol on his hand glows bright. Dark energy swells and pulses around him. Suddenly, Raru's spirit emerges. Not good. We must go! Raru takes control of Link's arm. The king forces Link's hand onto the floor, and the realm gate lights up. A wave of shadow engulfs the room, and everything goes dark. Link opens his eyes to find that he's no longer inside the Shadow Temple. Rather, he now stands within the sacred realm, at the realm's center. Across from him is the Demon King Ganon, the awakened evil, who simply snarls. What a clever trick, Rauru. Bringing us here just before my power could engulf your vessel. But do you really think that makes a difference? Even with your aid and that sword, this lone knight is no match for me. I am well aware, Ganondorf. I've seen the extent of your power firsthand. However, that is not the only reason I brought us here. Despite what you may think, this knight does not fight alone. Ganondorf simply scoffs and rushes forward to deliver a mighty punch. But in that moment, Yona appears before Link, cloaked in a veil of water that just barely keeps the Demon King at bay. Tulin then appears behind Link and unleashes a mighty whirlwind that's able to blow Ganondorf back a bit. So this is the big bad guy, huh? Don't worry, Link. We're here to help. Yes. Now that his magic no longer restrains us, we sages can offer you our full support. Suddenly, Yunobo appears and rockets forward as a ball of flaming stone. Ganondorf catches the Goron with both hands, and the two struggle briefly. Yunobo gains the upper hand, however, when a bolt of yellow lightning descends from the heavens to strike Ganondorf. Yunobo bounces back toward Link, beside whom is Riju. Yeah! How do you like that, Demon King? A man such as you has no right to name himself king of anything. Ganondorf stands up and casually cracks his neck. So this was your master plan, Rauru? Uniting the other sages against me. You've tried this once before and failed.
and I notice that the Sage of Spirit is absent this time. These are not the same sages you faced back then, Ganondorf. I have witnessed the determination and valor of these warriors firsthand. I have seen the things they can accomplish when they stand together. Underestimate them at your own peril.
Very well then. Come, inheritors of the sacred tears. Rauru places his faith in you, so you had best entertain me.
Link and the sages take up arms against the Demon King. This battle is radically different from before, as Ganondorf no longer uses any weapons. Instead, he now fights barehanded. He can charge a mighty punch infused with dark energy, deliver a swift kick that carries him across the battlefield, and even has two different command grabs. A one-handed grab that sends Link flying back in an explosion of darkness, and a two-handed one that lets him siphon away Link's health. If this moveset sounds even slightly familiar, yes, I am giving Ganondorf his kit from Smash. Oh, also, Link can't Flurry Rush Ganondorf in this stage. The Demon King casually bats aside any attempt to do so. Anyways, the fight won't be easy, but Link and the sages are able to put Ganondorf on the back foot with their combined might. In retaliation, Ganondorf summons some familiar faces to even the odds. Dark Link, Puppet Zelda, Phantom Ganon, and even another malicious shade. They're far weaker than the boss variants that Zelda went up against, but they still serve to even the odds and keep the sages occupied. These apparitions are still susceptible to Flurry Rush. Even with his minions assisting him, Ganondorf is forced to take the threat seriously, especially since the Master Sword deals not insignificant damage compared to other weapons. Once his health bar is low enough, or his minions are beaten, Ganondorf cries out and summons a massive pig-like avatar to repel Link and his allies. They're all sent skidding along the ground, and with one ferocious blow, Ganondorf has turned the tides back in his favor. Ganondorf approaches the hero slowly.
Do you see now? It is pointless. Before me you are nothing, and now...
Ganondorf begins charging up another wave of dark energy. Rauru appears, urging the sages to stand back up. They attempt to do so, but there doesn't seem to be enough time to evade the incoming attack. Until... Suddenly, a volley of shimmering projectiles rains down from above, striking Ganondorf and interrupting his attack. The skies are filled with a golden radiance, and a voice speaks out from above.
Link, everyone, do not despair. This battle is far from over.
The camera zooms in on the speaker's face, and a name card appears. Divine Queen Zelda, the Resolute Goddess. All parties watch on as Zelda descends. Link and his allies with shock, Ganondorf with anger.
You.
Ganondorf, ancient blight upon my realm, your wickedness shall be tolerated no further. Now, face my judgment.
Zelda summons a barrier to keep the others at bay, now facing Ganondorf alone. As a goddess, Zelda starts with a bunch of yellow hearts and her magic gauge recharges significantly faster than before. Furthermore, all of her light-based spells are now, well, flashier. Needless to say, she can deal pretty decent damage to Ganondorf with them, though the Demon King is still not to be taken lightly. In addition to his melee attacks, he starts using barrages of dark projectiles, shockwaves of crimson energy, and even conjures a large sphere of energy that he can hurl at Zelda. If Zelda uses Encasing Love, she can reflect this sphere back at him, to which Ganondorf responds by punching it back at her. Yes, you can play Dead Man's Volley as Zelda, bouncing the projectile back and forth until someone is caught and stunned by it. The only thing Zelda can't do now is call on Minoru. However, she does have a substitute. The button usually used for possession now lets Zelda summon her own sacred staff, from which she unleashes spiraling projectiles of light. Ganondorf will usually evade this, but if Zelda can use it while he's charging up an attack, it binds him in place for a time. The battle between the Demon King and the Divine Queen is a sight to behold.
When Ganondorf's HP gets low enough, he once again summons the boar avatar to charge Zelda. In response, Zelda conjures a giant owl to counter the blow. The two godlike beings take to the skies, clashing over and over again, before suddenly flying south. Link and his allies watch in disbelief. Rauru appears to comment on this sudden turn of events. So, she has become a goddess. Zelda has far greater resolve than I ever did. That was awesome! Ganondorf's in big trouble now.
I am not so sure. Their strength seems rather equal.
Yes, I fear that as things stand, the battle could go either way. Then we gotta go after them. We gotta help Princess Zelda.
I am not so sure that would be wise. Zelda raised a barrier to keep us out of the crossfire. She knows that she and Ganondorf are now fighting on a level far above any of us.
Indeed, a battle between gods is no place for mere mortals. Link clenches his fist and turns his gaze southward. He starts walking, and Rauru calls out for him to wait. Link simply turns and gives the king's spirit a determined look. Rauru stares back, mouth agape, and nods. Of course, I should know better than to try and deter you. Even so, if you intend to aid her, then you will need to rise to their level. Huh? What do you mean? You wanna make Link into a god too? Believe me, I do not wish to. Ascending to godhood comes at a heavy price. Such a lofty perspective has a tendency to change a person, their beliefs, their morals. I am sure you all notice Zelda's behavior.
Yes, one wonders how this transformation will affect her and Link once all is said and done.
Regardless, Link, if you intend to stand alongside her to face the Demon King, then loath as I am to admit it, that may be the only way. I could not bring myself to make that choice long ago. Are you certain you will be able to? Link gives a resolute nod. Very well. There are three components needed for a mortal to reach godhood: the power of a sage, a sacred tear, and a shard of the Triforce. You have a sacred tear in your possession, Sonia's. Its power may be weakened, but perhaps, if combined with the Master Sword, that may be enough to make up the difference.
But even with that, Link is not a sage.
True, but only the power of a sage is required, and your souls are bound to Link's. Oh yeah, that's true! So all we have to do is lend Link our power?
Nothing out of the ordinary, then.
Quite. As for the final piece, suddenly, the Triforce symbol begins to glow on the back of Link's borrowed hand. The Triforce, even fragmented, holds the power of miracles. This is what allowed me to seal Ganondorf away over 10,000 years ago. It is also how I was able to graft my arm onto Link's and create the soul bonds. With this, we should have everything we need. Link nods and takes out Sonia's sacred tear. He places it against the crossguard of the Master Sword, and the stone seems to latch itself into place. It even glows a little brighter. Good. Now then, sages of Hyrule, please, lend us your power. The sages all reach out towards Link. You don't gotta tell us twice. Go get him, Link. We're counting on you.
The fate of all realms and people rests upon your shoulders. You must emerge victorious.
Just try not to get too caught up in this whole God thing, yeah? You gotta come back to us when you're done so we can all celebrate. Indeed. Defeat the Demon King and save your princess. Link grasps the Master Sword tightly with both hands and closes his eyes. The Triforce symbol on his hand glows brighter as the power from the four sages flows into him. Energy swells around Link, and he opens his eyes again, though they are now pure white. Zelda and Ganondorf crash down on Ilya Island. There, Zelda is sent flying back across the grass. Ganondorf steps forward from the cloud of dust.
How? Why is it not enough?
Just like Queen Sonia before you.
We may both possess the might of gods, but that does not make us equals. I was shaped by a lifetime of hardship and conflict. You have always been sheltered and protected by those who should be beneath you.
Zelda stands once more, but before she and Ganondorf can clash, a mighty roar fills the heavens above. They both look up to behold a massive dragon with shimmering white and green scales circling, before it comes crashing down between them. Link steps forward, his visage changed by his ascent to godhood. He says nothing as he aims the Master Sword at Ganondorf, its blade now engulfed in spiraling energy. A name card appears to reintroduce him. Brave Deity Link, the timeless hero.
Impossible! You are not a sage! Damn you, Rauru! You and your endless trickery!
Link, stand aside. I must be the one to strike this villain down. Link looks back at Zelda with pure white eyes, his expression unreadable. Even so, it seems he refuses to back down. You would defy me? No matter. There are more important matters at hand than your insubordination. Come then. Our final battle is at hand. And so the true final battle begins. Link can no longer call on the sages for help, but pressing left or right on the D-pad allows players to switch back to Zelda and vice versa. Both start the fight with yellow hearts, and Link's Master Sword now has an unlimited charge. Furthermore, he can now use Chrono Rush when perfectly dodging attacks. Players need only press the Y button once, and Link will rush forward to deliver what appears to be a single strike against his foe. Then, several slash lines appear before the enemy is blasted back. Basically, one of those delayed anime cuts. Needless to say, the whole fight is meant to be a spectacle. I'll admit that the final battle in the original game with the dragons might be a little more grandiose in some respects, but my version aims to have all three Triforce bearers face off as proper equals. After a long and epic struggle, Link and Zelda manage to put Ganondorf on the back foot. He tries to charge once more in his boar form, but Zelda summons her owl avatar to hold him back. Behind her, Link takes draconic form to fire a beam of energy at the Demon King, knocking him out of his transformed state. Link and Zelda likewise return to human form, and players are prompted to mash Y to deliver a flurry of projectiles at Ganondorf. Sword beams from Link and light arrows from Zelda. The pair unleashes one final combined beam to overwhelm the Demon King, who laments his defeat as the light engulfs him.
So might alone is not enough.
When the light fades, both Ganondorf and his sacred tear are gone. In their place is a singular shard of the Triforce. Zelda approaches it slowly, while Link sheaths his sword. At last, the Demon King is bested. After so many years, the Triforce can be made whole again. We can repair these broken realms, banish all evil, and undo all the damage that has been done. Perhaps we can even resurrect those who have been taken from us. We could. Link reaches out with his right hand and gently grasps Zelda's arm. She turns back to look at him, confused. Is that really what you want? What? Of course it is. To finally truly heal all the pain my kingdom has suffered. How could I possibly desire anything less? And what does Hyrule want? What does Hyrule want? Hyrule will heal, but it needs its princess, not a goddess. Zelda begins to argue that what Link is saying is absurd. As a goddess, she could punish all evildoers and ensure that no villains like Ganondorf ever rise to prominence again. With the full might of the Triforce at her disposal, she could bring eternal peace not just to Hyrule, but the whole world. But then, Zelda pauses and recalls Minoru's words, that godhood would strip Zelda of her true self, and the compassion that defines her. She realizes that her friend's prediction is becoming true, and gently pulls her hand away from Link's to gaze toward the Triforce mark upon it. Perhaps you are right. I am merely being selfish, trying to make the world conform to my wishes. In that respect, I would be no different from Ganondorf. This power is far too much for any mortal to bear. So then, Link, let us make amends and return things to how they ought to be.
Link nods and moves to stand beside Zelda. The duo raise their hands, allowing their respective shards of the Triforce to leave them and reunite with the one left behind by Ganondorf. At long last, the Triforce is whole again, and Link and Zelda return to their Hylian forms. Suddenly, Link's arm begins to dissolve into several shimmering particles. He kneels down in pain, and Zelda rushes to his side. The particles converge into Raru's spirit, and he hovers there before them. My apologies. It takes incredible conviction to do what you just did. However, without the Triforce shard bound in my arm, I'm afraid the minor miracles I wove with it have begun to unravel. In truth, my spirit shall not be able to remain for much longer either. Link, did you know this would happen? Link says nothing, but his gaze speaks volumes. Tears form in Zelda's eyes. What about the Triforce? We could... Link simply shakes his head, trying to reassure her that it's all right. He'll manage, somehow. Rauru simply smiles. You truly do possess an indomitable spirit, Link. Hyrule is fortunate to have you, as it is fortunate to have such a knowledgeable and caring leader. I am proud to know you are my descendant, Zelda. Between the two of you, the kingdom is in good hands. King Rauru. Rauru turns to face the Triforce. But I believe one last miracle is in order. Link, Zelda, it is time we all return to where we belong. Rauru clasps his hands together and focuses his mind. Before anyone else can even respond, the Ancient King makes a wish upon the Triforce, and its power surges across the sacred realm. The realm bleed is undone. Link, Zelda, the sages, and all of Hyrule's inhabitants trapped within the sacred realm are returned from whence they came. Rauru lets out a sigh, watching the bridge to Ilya Island crumble, only to notice a presence behind him. He turns and sees the spirits of Minoru and Sonia hovering above him, reaching out their hands. Rauru smiles and reaches out to join them, leaving the Triforce here on an isolated island in the sacred realm, where none will be able to reach it, at least not anytime soon. We transition to a scene happening several days later. A massive crowd has gathered in Hyrule Castle's courtyard. Representatives of all the kingdom's major races chatter excitedly with each other, while Link stands alone gazing up at the balcony. Suddenly, Purah approaches. Ah, snap! There you are! Been looking for you. How's the new arm doing? Link looks down at his right arm, which has been outfitted with a Sheikah prosthesis. He flexes its fingers briefly, then nods. Good to hear. Robbie and I worked pretty hard to get that bad boy working, though we might be able to improve it further if we... Suddenly, Robbie appears to shush Purah, telling her that it is starting. Zelda steps out onto the balcony, clad in a resplendent dress and adorning a gilded crown. All eyes look to her and all voices fall silent as their new queen begins her speech. The Demon King thought us weak. He believed this kingdom was frail, and its people were cowardly, undeserving of a future. However, looking around me now, I can say with certainty that he was wrong. Hyrule has endured so much pain, so much tragedy, but through it all our spirits remain unbroken. After every calamity we rebuild. In times of crisis we reach out to one another. It is not weakness to seek the aid of others, nor is it wrong to extend a hand to those who need it. Together we can achieve so much more than any one person could ever do alone. Strength is not just the power to force your will onto others. It is the wisdom to act for the benefit of all, and the courage to make the most difficult choices. Today marks the beginning of a new era for Hyrule. No more will we be tormented by the evils of the past. Thus, I decree, let this day be writ in legend.